when our ancestors kindled a lone fire beneath the Milky Way's shining river? Were they simply lighting the night, or igniting the very first story of who we are? The little fire they have built casts a trembling glow on their faces and the rocky shelter behind them. Its warmth keeps the chill of night at bay and paints moving shadows on the ground. But beyond that circle of orange light lies darkness as old as the world. Out there, the night is lit only by the cosmos itself. Compared to the vast starlight above, their campfire is a tiny, fragile spark. Yet it is their spark, a comforting beacon of warmth and safety amid the immense and unknowable night. Under the infinite sky, they draw close to one another, finding comfort both in the fire at their feet and the familiar stars overhead. In the beginning, before cities or farms or written history, night falls over an endless wild landscape. A small band of our ancestors huddles close around a gentle, crackling fire. Above them stretches a vast and velvet darkness, a night sky brimming with countless stars. There are no houses with bright windows, no streetlights or city glow, only pure darkness and the brilliance of the cosmos arching overhead. The Milky Way unfurls across the heavens as a luminous river of haze, a pale band of light made of uncountable distant stars. They lift their eyes often to this celestial canopy. For these early people, the sky is alive and mesmerizing. Each pinpoint of light above is sharp and clear, shining with a steady twinkle. If one looked carefully, they could even discern subtle colors in the stars. Some glowed blue-white and crisp, while others flickered with a faint golden or reddish hue, adding to the sky's rich tapestry. In the cool night air, under the flicker of starlight and firelight, they feel both very small and deeply connected to the world around them. The night is immense and mysterious, yet also comfortingly familiar. This dazzling tapestry above has been their constant companion every evening of their lives. No one speaks for a long while as they gaze upward. The hush of the night is broken only by the soft whisper of wind through the grasses and the distant hoot of an owl. The stars seem to whisper too, in a language beyond words. Perhaps a mother holds her child and gently points at a particularly bright star glowing on the horizon. The child's eyes widen at the sight. To that child, and even to the elders, these lights in the sky are beautiful unknowns. They might wonder what the stars are, campfires of great spirits, or the eyes of animals watching from the darkness above. They do not know the answers, but they feel the quiet power of those lights all the same. As the night deepens, more stars emerge that were hidden at dusk. The longer they look, the more they see, as if the heavens were a vast plain of glittering stones overhead. Tonight, the moon is absent from the sky, making the darkness deeper and the stars even more plentiful. On other nights, when the moon is full and high, its silvery glow gently lights the ground, and only the brightest stars remain visible. But on this moonless night, the entire celestial panorama is on display, unobscured by any other light. The band of the Milky Way stands out clearly now, a ghostly arch across the dome of night. Some in the group may see shapes in that starry mist, perhaps thinking of it as the breath of some celestial creature, or a bridge to realms beyond their reach. Overhead, a shooting star silently streaks across the darkness, a quick flash of light with a delicate tail that vanishes almost as soon as it appears. A few people gasp softly, pointing upward in surprise. What could that have been? A fiery spirit darting across the sky? A sign from the unknown world above? It leaves them in brief awe, and then it is gone. The night returns to its quiet stillness, as though nothing had happened. In the far north, faint curtains of green and pale red light sometimes ripple low on the horizon. The aurora borealis, the northern lights. Perhaps on this night, those living in high latitudes see a shimmering veil at the edge of the starry canvas. The wavering lights look like spirits dancing in the sky. The ancestors watching might feel a mix of wonder and a touch of caution at the sight of that eerie glow. They have no word for this phenomenon, but it imprints itself on their hearts as something strange and magical. Everywhere across the world, the night sky is a source of wonder in these primeval times. In a moonlit clearing, deep in a lush forest, families peer up through gaps in the leafy canopy as the stars appear one by one, whispering in awe at each new light. On a faraway shore, fishermen drifting in rafts gaze at the heavens, mirrored in the calm sea, grateful for the gentle lights guiding them along the water. High on a lonely mountain pass, a traveller wraps himself against the cold and finds comfort in the eternal stars above, which keep him company on his journey. No matter where they live, be it jungle, coast, or high plain, all of these early people share a silent reverence for the glittering tapestry overhead. In time, they also learn to use the sky as both compass and calendar. They travel by the stars when venturing at night, recognizing patterns in the heavens that reliably lead them home. One bright star, hanging low in the northern sky, never seems to move, staying fixed while the other stars slowly wheel around it. This steady light becomes a trusted guidepost on dark nights. As the seasons turn, certain stars or groups of stars return to the same place in the sky, then vanish for a while, heralding changes in weather or the migrations of animals. Even without writing, this knowledge of the stars is remembered and passed down. Elders teach the young which stars mark the time to sow seeds, or the time when rains will come, weaving these lessons into stories and traditions. To know the sky is to know when to travel, when to plant, when to prepare. Their lives are quietly tuned to the rhythm of the heavens. For these early humans, night after night beneath the primeval sky shapes their view of the world. The darkness is vast, but dotted with friendly lights. Perhaps some nights fill them with quiet joy, a feeling that they are not alone under this sparkling dome. Other nights, the enormity of the cosmos might make them feel small and vulnerable, prompting them to draw nearer to each other by the warmth of the fire. The stars keep their silent watch regardless, twinkling gently as they have for ages. Over time, patterns in the stars grow familiar. Human eyes and minds begin to seek meaning in those points of light. Maybe an elder traces a line in the air from one star to another, imagining a shape, a great animal, or a proud hunter, formed by the starry dots. Others squint and try to see it too. They start to connect the stars like a cosmic connect the dots, revealing pictures in the sky's random scatter. In this way, what was once pure mystery begins to turn into stories and symbols. The stage is set. Under the silent, glittering skies of prehistory, the seeds of imagination are sown. Those seeds will soon blossom into constellations and myths that carry on through countless generations. And as our ancestors continue to watch the heavens, the stars above will slowly become more than just lights. They will become the characters and guides in the grand story of human culture. For countless generations, nights like this unfolded in quiet continuity. The stars were both a comfort and a mystery. Familiar friends that appeared with each dusk, yet always inspiring new questions. In the grand silence beneath the cosmos, our early ancestors found a sense of place and wonder. They could not touch those distant lights, but in their own way, they reached toward them with stories, rituals, and an endless awe. The primal bond between human life and the starry sky was forming, one peaceful night at a time, laying the groundwork for all the celestial lore and wisdom that would follow. As generations passed, those seeds of imagination began to blossom. The stars above were no longer merely distant lights. They had become characters in the tales our ancestors told by the evening fire. Picture a circle of listeners gathered under the night sky, eyes shining with reflections of the flames, as an elder raises a hand toward the glittering heavens. In a soft, rhythmic voice, the elder begins to speak of shapes drawn among the stars, of heroes and beasts placed eternally in the sky. Everyone, from the smallest child to the grey-haired grandparents, listens in quiet wonder. They can see the stories come alive above them as they follow the elder's guiding hand from one star to the next. Perhaps the tale that night is of a great hunter. The elder points out a familiar pattern of stars high overhead. A broad shoulder here, a line of 3 bright stars forming a belt, and below them a sword hanging down. In their story, this is a mighty hunter from long ago. The elder recounts how he once roamed the earth, fearless and proud, until he was placed among the stars to watch over the people forever. As the story unfolds, the listeners gaze up and imagine the outline of a figure striding across the sky, stars marking his shining belt and sword. The hunter's story is not frightening or loud. It is told in a lilting, soothing cadence, as if the very stars themselves were listening. All across the world, different peoples looked at those same starry patterns and spun their own stories. Over a distant horizon, another tribe might see a very different figure in that cluster of stars. What one culture knows as a hunter, another imagines as a celestial dancer, and yet another as a guiding ancestor watching over them. For example, a group in the far north may trace those same stars into the shape of a gigantic bear lumbering across the sky. They say that bear is forever being gently followed by 3 hunters, the 3 stars of the belt, as it moves through the seasons. Meanwhile, far to the south, where different constellations shine, people look up and see the form of a mighty fish or a wise old man outlined in the heavens. Each culture paints the night with its own imagination, finding familiar shapes in the sparkling points and weaving meaning into them. The constellations carried lessons and legends. In ancient Greek myth, for instance, the great bear in the sky was said to be a once mortal woman named Callisto, transformed into a bear and placed among the stars by a god. She became the constellation Ursa Major, with her bright stars eternally circling the North Star. Each night, as that starry bear slowly wheels around the northern pole, mothers would tell their children the story of Callisto, explaining why those stars never dip below the horizon. It was a comforting tale that suggested even in darkness, a protective spirit watches over the world from the sky. Even the hazy band of the Milky Way, arching overhead, became the subject of many legends. To some of our ancestors, it was a shimmering river, perhaps the great river of the heavens, flowing with stars instead of water. Others saw it as the pathway of spirits, a road on which souls journey to the afterlife. In one gentle story, it was said to be a trail of softly glowing ashes left by a campfire that the gods lit long ago. And in another land's lore, the Milky Way was spilled milk from a divine mother, strewn across the sky to form a glowing arc. Listening to such stories on a quiet night, one can almost feel the warmth of those ancient firesides, where eyes lifted from the flames to that pale ribbon of light and found comfort in a beautiful explanation for its presence. Many individual stars and clusters, gathered layers of myth. A tiny cluster of faint stars, for instance, became a group of 7 sisters in many tales around the world. On clear nights, our ancestors marveled at these close-knit stars clinging together in the darkness. One culture might say they are 7 loving sisters placed in the sky, always together and caring for one another. Another culture might tell of those stars as a group of young friends dancing eternally, their laughter immortalized in the twinkling lights. Interestingly, most people could only ever clearly see 6 of the stars, not 7, leading to gentle stories that one sister hides or has gone away. Around the fires, children would ask why, and the elders would smile and share the old tale of the lost 7th sister, a story passed down through countless generations. There is no urgency or fear in these narratives, only a sense of wonder and the feeling that the night sky is alive with familiar, friendly presences. On the far side of the world, under different skies, people told a tender story of 2 lovers separated by the stars. In Chinese lore, a heavenly princess, known as the Weaver Girl, was placed in the sky as a bright star, and her beloved cowherd as another star across the great celestial river of the Milky Way. They shine as the stars, Vega and Altair, forever facing each other from opposite sides of that silvery river of light. It was said that only once a year, on a special summer night, a bridge of birds would form across the Milky Way, allowing the 2 to reunite for just a few precious hours. On Earth below, families would look up on that night and retell the tale in hushed voices, finding comfort in the idea that love and reunion were written into the stars themselves. Not only the fixed stars, but also the wandering ones took their place in the story. At dusk, one particularly bright star might appear low in the sky, outshining all others. Unlike the rest, it does not stay fixed among the patterns of the night, but moves over days and weeks, a wandering star, what we now know as a planet. To early observers, this moving light was mysterious and special. They gave it names and personalities. One culture imagined it as a loving goddess who shines in the evening and at dawn, while another saw it as a swift messenger spirit racing through the heavens. When that bright evening star would fade away with the sunrise, people wove explanations into their myths. Perhaps it was a deity traveling to the underworld, or a celestial herald announcing the coming day. These wandering lights, though few, became key characters in the sky's drama, each with its own story to tell. Through stories, the night sky became an ancient picture book, its bright dots connected by the lines of human imagination. Every sparkling cluster overhead held significance. A red-tinged star might be said to glow red because it was touched by the dawn or by the embers of a mythical fire. A pair of stars might be lovers reunited in the sky. Each tale, whispered under the vault of stars, made the vast cosmos feel a little more intimate and a little less unknowable. Lying back on cool sand or grass, our ancestors could point upward and feel that they recognized friends among the stars, the heroes, animals, and guardians they had imagined there. These constellations and myths were shared aloud in hushed, melodic voices, gently binding communities together with common visions of the night. Over time, these starry stories also served practical needs, but above all, they comforted and inspired, carrying the wisdom and wonder of each culture forward into every new evening. Night by night, and season by season, our ancestors came to rely on the sky as their calendar. In a settlement by a great river long ago, a gathering of people stands quietly at dawn. For weeks they have risen early, watching the eastern horizon in the pale morning twilight. They are waiting for a certain bright star to reappear after many months of absence. The air is cool and still as the sky begins to brighten. Then, just above the horizon, a tiny spark of white-blue light emerges in the glow of dawn. An elder points silently, and gentle smiles spread through the group. They know this star, appearing like a herald before the sun, signifies that the annual floods will soon swell the river. Its timely arrival means the rains have come far upstream. It is the signal that a new season of planting and growth is about to begin. In hushed gratitude, they offer a simple morning prayer, thankful for the star's return and the promise it carries. In many corners of the world, people learn to mark time by the stars in similar ways. Without clocks or written calendars, they observed the heavens for regular signs of change. Perhaps in a desert oasis, families knew that when a certain red star rose at sunset, the cool autumn season was near. In mountain valleys, hunters watched for the return of a particular cluster of stars in early spring, taking it as the moment when game would start migrating, or when it was time to plant seedlings. Each community paid close attention to the sky's shifting patterns. The first appearance of a star after months of absence, the last glimpse of a constellation before it sank below the horizon. These became reliable notes in nature's song of time. Year after year, such celestial cues guided people in planting, harvesting, hunting, and preparing for the turning of the seasons. As the years passed, the realization grew that the cosmic cycles were consistent and could be trusted. People noticed how the sun's rising point moved along the horizon through the year, creeping northward, then back south, and how the longest and shortest days marked midsummer and midwinter. They linked those solar events with the stars overhead. When the sun rose in front of certain background stars, it was time for summer, and half a year later, opposite stars signaled winter. The whole sky became a giant clock and calendar. Different star groups took turns reigning in the night. One constellation would dominate the winter evenings, then sink away as another took its place in spring. By observing these regular heavenly rhythms, our ancestors began to predict the seasonal changes more precisely than ever before. Before long, certain members of a community might devote themselves to watching the sky each night, becoming early keepers of time. These wise observers, sometimes priests, sometimes simply elders with keen eyes and patience, memorized the complex dance of stars and seasons. They learned which stars rose together with each full moon, how the position of a brilliant planet at dawn might hint at coming rains, or which constellations were highest when the first frost arrived. This knowledge, treasured and often considered sacred, was carefully passed down through generations. Night after night, one such elder might sit quietly by the embers of a fire, eyes turned upward, noting the first stars to appear and the shifting positions of familiar patterns as the seasons progressed. Perhaps he marks time by dropping a pebble into a bowl each evening when a particular star sets, or by carving tiny lines on a stick to count the days until that star returns at dawn. In this way, the Sky Watcher serves as the community's living calendar. Through that patient vigil, they know when it's the right moment to begin a long journey, or when the village should prepare for the first frost. Such devotion to the stars keeps everyone safe and prepared, and it also deepens the sense of wonder and respect people feel toward the cosmos. Even without written records, they found ways to mark the passage of time and the movements of the heavens. Some communities built simple markers on the land, a tall pole or a stone set against the horizon, to note the spot where the sun rose on the solstice, or where a beloved star first appeared in the dawn. Others used notches on sticks or carved symbols on rock to count the days between celestial events. In a few places, artifacts have been found, ancient carvings and bronze discs that show clusters of stars or the crescent moon, hinting that our ancestors tried to capture the sky's pattern in their art. These were early tools of astronomy, long before the word existed, humble ways to remember and predict the celestial schedule that guided their lives. Many communities wove these celestial signs into their traditions. In a northern woodland village, for example, the first sighting of a certain star cluster in the evening sky might signal the time for a harvest celebration. As soon as those stars, their 7 sisters, twinkled into view at dusk, villagers would light a circle of bonfires. They would gather to sing soft songs of gratitude for the bounty, or to pray for fertile fields, all under the newly returned sparkle of that starry group. Their festivities were gentle and reverent, timed to the cosmos. By celebrating when the heavens gave the sign, they felt they were moving in step with the universe's plan. Such rituals, tied to the rising of stars, reassured them that their lives were indeed intertwined with the great cosmic dance overhead. Over time, as communities grew and knowledge deepened, some cultures undertook more ambitious projects to track the sky. They gathered to erect rings of wood or stone, aligning them with the rising sun or with bright stars at certain times of year. On days of significance, a solstice, an equinox, or the heliacal rising of an important star, the morning light, or the first star of evening, would align perfectly with a doorway or between specially placed pillars. Imagine standing in one of these circles on the appointed dawn. The first ray of sun pierces the shadows and falls exactly on a chosen stone in the ring, just as expected. Such a moment must have been awe-inspiring and affirming, proof that the order of the cosmos was understood, at least in part. By building these early temples to time, our ancestors bound earth and sky together. They made the passing of seasons tangible, celebrating the cosmic dance with structures that would outlast countless generations. When the sunlight or starlight marked the promised day, the people knew that they were in harmony with the heavens, their rituals and lives flowing with the grand rhythm above. In the dim light before dawn, a great circle of standing stones waits silently on a broad plain. This is a sacred gathering place, a prehistoric monument built with immense effort and care. On this midsummer morning, a crowd of people has assembled among the monoliths, just as their ancestors did for generations untold. The grass is damp with dew, and a cool hush hangs in the air, filled with anticipation. The eastern sky grows lighter, and birdsong begins to echo across the plain. All eyes are on a gap between 2 massive stones that frames the horizon. Moments later, the tip of the sun's glowing disk breaks the horizon exactly in that gap. A shaft of golden sunlight streams through, flooding the center of the circle. The tallest stone at the heart of the circle catches the light and seems to blaze. Soft gasps and murmurs of awe ripple through the gathered crowd. It is the summer solstice sunrise, arriving in perfect alignment with their stone temple. In that quiet, breathtaking moment, the people standing there feel utterly connected to the earth beneath their feet, to the sun climbing the sky, and to those who raised these stones long ago for just this purpose. These very stones, hauled over great distances and erected with incredible devotion, now serve their intended role: to greet the solstice sun. The new light of midsummer washes over faces young and old, and for a time all is still, except for the gentle warmth spreading over the ancient stones. Long before such grand stone circles rose, smaller markers were placed to track the skies. On a desolate plain in Africa's Sahara Desert, over 6,000 years ago, people arranged a humble circle of stones that aligned with the sunrise at midsummer. It is a simple construction by later standards, just modest rocks set in the sand. Yet it likely helped those nomadic herders anticipate the coming rains and the season of plenty. Even in those distant times, long before pharaohs or great cities, humans were looking upward and marking the turning of the year with stone and earth, expressing a deep need to connect with the cosmos. On another shore, far to the west, stands a different kind of monument to the heavens. An ancient earthen mound with a stone-lined passageway, older even than the great circle of stones on the plain. All year its inner chamber lies in cold darkness. But at the winter solstice, the longest night of the year, something miraculous happens. As the sun rises on midwinter's morning, a thin beam of light sneaks through a perfectly aligned opening above the mound's doorway. The beam travels slowly down the long stone corridor and gently illuminates the central chamber deep inside the hill. For about 15 minutes, this inner sanctum, which has remained in shadow for the rest of the year, is bathed in the soft golden light of the low winter sun. In that brief span, the darkness of the tomb is overcome by a warm glow, as if the year's new light has come to visit the ancestors resting within. One can imagine the ancient builders and their descendants gathered outside, witnessing this quiet marvel with reverence and hope. The promise that even in the bleakest winter, the light will return. Under different skies, other ancient peoples also wove their monuments into the fabric of the cosmos. In Egypt, the Great Pyramids were engineered with such precision that they align almost perfectly with the cardinal directions, a feat achieved by observing the stars to find true north and south. Those massive tombs, oriented to the points of the compass, ensured that the pharaoh's resting places were in harmony with the universe. Far to the east, temples and entire cities were often laid out according to celestial events and the four directions, making daily life move in step with the heavens. Each sunrise might fall along a carefully planned avenue. Each important star had its place in their ceremonial calendar. These alignments underscored a belief shared across many cultures, that sacred structures on Earth should mirror the order of the sky above. Across the oceans in the Americas, the connection between sky and stone was just as profound. The Maya of Central America built lofty pyramids where, on equinox days, sunlight and shadow would form the shape of a great serpent slithering down the temple's steps, a moment of myth and astronomy intertwined. In the high Andes, the Inca crafted their sun temple, so that at dawn on the winter solstice, the sun's rays streamed through a small window to illuminate a sacred stone, as if igniting it with life for the new year. In the arid canyons of North America, indigenous peoples created spirals and petroglyphs that cast dagger-like beams of sunlight on rock faces during solstices and equinoxes, marking seasonal milestones in light and shadow. Although separated by vast distances, these cultures all built in anticipation of the heavens' choreography, celebrating the moments when the sun or stars would greet their carefully arranged works of earth and stone. On the days when the heavens and the monuments met as intended, the effect on those watching must have been profound. At the sacred stone circles and temples, those gathered would see tangible proof that their world was in harmony with the cosmos. When the first light of the sun pierced a monument's heart, or a star rose directly above its altar stone, it was as if the universe was responding to their faith and effort. In those instants, time itself, The changing of seasons, the turning of years, became a visible, almost touchable thing. Ceremonies were likely held at such moments, with gentle chants, quiet offerings, or dances, but often a respectful hush might fall at the very moment of alignment. It was a time to feel the presence of the divine in nature, to be reminded that the great forces guiding the world were also guiding them. People stood bathed in the rosy dawn light, or the first starbeam of evening, hearts swelling with a sense of connection and peace. In that silence, they felt both the vastness of the universe and the intimacy of being part of its grand design. Millennia have passed, and many of those stones still stand. Though the people who placed them are long gone, their creations continue to mark the passages of sun and star. To this day, on certain magical mornings and evenings, visitors from our modern world gather at these ancient sites, at Stonehenge, at Newgrange, and many others, to witness the same alignments that once amazed our ancestors. They stand in silence as the sun rises or sets in that familiar, ageless pattern. For a moment, the boundary of time thins. Past and present merge under the same sky. We find ourselves connected with those distant ancestors, all of us turning our faces to the light or to the glittering night, moved by the same sense of wonder. And so, the legacy of those early sky watchers lives on. The circles of stone, the temples open to the sky, and the starry stories passed down through the ages, all remind us that we are part of something vast and ongoing. Even now, when we tilt our heads back on a clear night, the glittering tapestry above is the very one that guided hands to build and hearts to dream in ancient days. The night wind whispers through the standing stones and across the centuries, carrying the same message that comforted our ancestors, that we are not alone under these stars. Generations come and go, civilizations rise and fall, but the stars remain, ever present. They invite each new generation to wonder, to mark the turning of time, and to add their own chapters to the endless story written in the skies. In this gentle twilight between history and myth, we drift with our forebears beneath the eternal cosmos, soothed by the knowledge that above us, the stars continue to shine and inspire, just as they did for those who came before. Now, as our journey under ancient skies draws to a close, we might take a moment to step outside and look upward. The night above us is the same one our ancestors saw, the same stars, planets, and cosmic wonders twinkling in the dark. In the stillness, we may feel their presence across time. Those early humans who once stood in awe, just as we do now. We are linked by that endless tapestry of light. Let the calm of the night sky wash over you, and as you drift into rest, know that the celestial lights above will continue to turn and shine, watching over us all, as they always have. Across the fertile plains of ancient Mesopotamia, night descends gently over clay brick cities and silent rivers. The dome of the sky, vast and velvet black, unfolds above like a sacred canopy. Countless stars shimmer into view, each one a tiny torch piercing the darkness. In this hushed twilight, farmers, shepherds, and kings alike lift their eyes upward. They do not see distant suns or balls of gas. Instead, they behold living stories, immortal beings shimmering in the heights. To the people of Sumer and Babylon, the heavens were alive with gods. Every wandering star and every glittering constellation carried meaning. The sky itself was a deity, an endless vault named Anu, the great father of the heavens. High above the earthly dust, Anu's domain gleamed with divine presence. The stars were thought of as his legions, or perhaps as the jeweled embroidery on his royal cloak. Each point of light was significant, not mere decoration, but a message or a messenger from the realm of spirit. Imagine a priest astronomer standing atop a towering ziggurat, those tiered temple pyramids that reached up toward the sky. Up on the highest platform, away from the lamplight of the city, he stands enveloped in a warm breeze. The scent of baked earth and distant date palms drifts by as he gazes at the sky's dark expanse. The last echoes of daytime bustle have faded below. Only the distant howl of a desert wolf and the faint murmur of a temple chant occasionally rise to his ears. He feels the warmth radiating from the sun-baked bricks under his sandaled feet begin to give way to the coolness of night. Overhead, a gentle breeze whispers, as if the sky itself were breathing. Above him, the familiar patterns of stars emerge. There is the great bull shimmering on the horizon, its horn-tipped head formed by a tight cluster of stars, and its ponderous shoulders glowing against the darkness. And over there, the shape of a lion prowling among the stars. These constellations, familiar even to us today, already carried ancient names and tales. The priest silently mouths a prayer to the bull of heaven, a mighty creature placed among the stars by the goddess Ishtar in their legends. He watches the lion's outline and recalls stories of kings and heroes placed in the heavens for their bravery. In Mesopotamian lore, the constellations were not arbitrary patterns. They were a celestial storybook. Long ago, wise ones had given the groups of stars identities from myth. The great twins, shining side by side, were a sacred pair, perhaps reflecting beloved heroes or divine brothers. The curved band of stars we call the Scorpion marked a powerful creature of the desert night. The gentle cluster of 7 stars we know as the Pleiades was seen as a special assembly of gods or fate-weaving spirits. To the Mesopotamians, this tiny sparkling cluster might have represented 7 divine sages or judges, tiny but powerful in their influence. Night after night, generation after generation, people whispered the names of these star figures, teaching each new child under the night sky to recognize them like old friends. Among all the lights in the sky, a few stood out dramatically: the wanderers. Today we call them planets, but to Mesopotamian stargazers, they were living gods moving through the heavens. The golden red light of Mars, for instance, slowly roamed across the backdrop of fixed stars. They called it Nergal, a deity of war and plague, and indeed, when that reddish star burned bright, it was as if Nergal himself was eyeing the world. Far brighter was the lovely Venus, a brilliant jewel that could outshine even the dawn. In the cool hours before sunrise, or the soft glow of evening, Venus would appear as a radiant star. The people named this planet Ishtar, or Inanna, the great goddess of love, fertility, and war. How magical it must have felt to see her star emerge on the horizon, bright enough to cast faint shadows. To them, it was the heavenly form of the goddess, beckoning nightfall or heralding the morning light. They noticed something mysterious about Ishtar's star. At times it was the evening star, shimmering at dusk in the west, and at other times it became the morning star, rising before the sun in the east. To the ancients, this cycle was a story of departure and return. They imagined that the goddess Ishtar descended into the underworld, vanishing from the evening sky, and after a time was reborn at dawn. Her disappearance for several nights and reappearance on the opposite horizon was woven into their myths. In later tales, Ishtar's journey to the underworld and her triumphant return could be mirrored by Venus's own celestial pattern. When she vanished, hearts grew anxious. When she returned, the world rejoiced at the goddess's rebirth. Another wanderer, a pale, reddish point slower than Ishtar, was the planet we call Mercury. It darted quickly near the sun's glare, hard to glimpse. The Mesopotamians linked this swift, elusive star to Nabu, the messenger of the gods and patron of scribes. Fittingly, just as a scribe moves quickly to record messages, Mercury raced across the sky, appearing briefly at dusk or dawn and never straying far from the sun. They saw it as a nimble divine herald, conveying the will of the heavens. Over months and years, other wandering stars made their stately progress. There was the bright giant Jupiter, known to these people as Marduk's star. Marduk was the patron deity of Babylon, a king of the gods, and it seemed only right that the largest, most regal wanderer belonged to him. When Jupiter rose high, shining steadily, it was as though mighty Marduk himself watched over the kingdom, a benevolent eye in the night. Farther out, with a dimmer golden glow, drifted Saturn, associated with Ninurta, a god of agriculture and war. Saturn moved so slowly that it lingered in each part of the sky for many months, a patient elder among the planetary gods. The moon, however, was perhaps the most beloved celestial god of all. Night by night, the moon god travelled across the sky, changing shape from slender crescent to full brilliance and back again. The Mesopotamians called him Nana or Sin, a wise and gentle deity who brought light to the darkness. When the moon first appeared after a few nights of absence, a thin silver bow hanging in the twilight, it was a time of celebration. Priests offered libations and prayers to honour the returning moon god, believing this crescent to be his smiling face, or a boat carrying him across the sky. As the crescent grew into a bright disk, people took comfort in its cool glow. They watched its phases as divine signs. A bright full moon might signal abundance and good fortune, while a moonless night could stir anxiety, as though the god had briefly turned his face away. The sun too was a deity, Shamash, the ever-seeing eye. At dawn each day, Shamash rose in the east and rode the sky, illuminating the world and dispelling the nightmares of night. Under his brilliant gaze, no wrongdoing could hide, so Shamash became known as a god of justice and truth. People believed he saw everything that happened by daylight. As the sun set in fiery splendour, they imagined Shamash departing through the western gates of the world to travel beneath the earth and return by morning. Yet even in absence, Shamash's presence was felt, for the stars that sparkled after sundown were part of his extended family of light. In Mesopotamian belief, Shamash was the son of the moon god and brother to Ishtar. Together, this radiant family, moon, sun, and Venus, formed a triad of cosmic powers watching over night and day. The universe felt harmonious when their journeys were regular and in balance. When you look up at the night sky now, it might seem silent and still. But in ancient Mesopotamia, the sky was full of movement, intention, and voice. They listened to the stars as one might listen to a chorus of whispering gods. A sudden shooting star streaking across the sky was not just a meteor. It could be a roaming divine being, or a sign sent to catch human attention. The Milky Way, a pale river of starlight, was imagined as a heavenly river or roadway on which gods travelled. Perhaps it was the gleaming path that spirits of the departed could wander, or the sparkling remnants of creation itself. In the clear desert air, that Milky Way glowed strongly overhead on moonless nights, inviting wonder and storytelling. By the glow of oil lamps, scribes in temple courtyards would press symbols into clay tablets to record what the heavens had shown. These ancient astronomer priests carefully noted each unusual event: the appearance of a new star, the approach of a comet, like a celestial broom sweeping the sky, or the reddening of the moon during an eclipse. To them, nothing in heaven happened without a reason. If the moon darkened suddenly in an eclipse, they thought it meant the moon god was sending a warning. On such nights, temple priests might gather in haste, burning incense and chanting prayers to coax back the light. Perhaps a great king had angered the heavens, or a dangerous change was coming. In response, the people would pray fervently and perform rituals to placate the gods above, hoping to avert any misfortune the omen foretold. This deep attention to the sky meant that over centuries, Mesopotamians amassed a remarkable knowledge of celestial patterns. They observed that the stars shifted with the seasons, migrating across the night sky throughout the year. Certain stars rose just before dawn at specific times of year, heralding the arrival of spring planting or autumn harvest. For example, when the bright star we call Sirius rose in the pre-dawn sky, it marked a turning point in the seasonal calendar, though in Mesopotamia, Sirius was not as prominent as it would be in Egypt's law. The people along the Tigris and Euphrates learned to anticipate annual floods and planting times by watching the heavens. The movements of the sky were like a vast clock, and the gods were the clockmakers. Yet beyond the practical, there was always the sense of something sacred and personal in the stars. A family in a mud brick home might step outside on a balmy night and point out the glowing band of the zodiac overhead, the special constellations that the planets and moon passed through. These constellations, the bull, the twins, the lion, and the scorpion, among others, formed a kind of celestial road. In Mesopotamian tradition, it was said that the hero god Marduk himself laid out the path of the stars. In their great creation story, after Marduk defeated the forces of chaos, he stretched out the heavens from the body of a primordial goddess and set the stars in their places. He appointed 3 bright stars to mark each month of the year, establishing the calendar in the sky. Thus, observing the heavens was not just stargazing, it was a reverent act, like reading the handiwork of the gods. On a balmy summer night, imagine a gathering in ancient Babylon beside the Euphrates River. The air is warm and filled with the chirping of insects. Above, the sky glitters. Elders tell the children how the constellations came to be. They describe how long ago, after the world was formed from cosmic battles, the gods decorated the heavens with patterns that would guide and inspire humanity. There, to the north, an elder might whisper, pointing his wrinkled finger, is the wagon of the sky. The children see the bright outline of what we call the Big Dipper. To the Mesopotamians, it is a wagon or chariot of the gods, forever turning around the pole star. And over there is the scorpion's curved tail. Do you see it? The group of stars flickers as if alive. One child squeezes his mother's hand at the sight, but grins as the others do when the elder assures them it's a protector in the sky, not a menace. The children shiver with delight and a little fear at the idea of a scorpion so large it spans the sky. In the story, that scorpion once protected the sacred mountain where the sun rests at night, showing that even a tiny creature on Earth can have a giant role in the cosmic realm. These tales are told softly under the stars, bonding each generation to the sky's grand mysteries. The universe above is not cold or distant. It is intimate and responsive. When a king wins a great battle, perhaps a new star appears, a token of divine approval etched in light. When a nation faces uncertainty, perhaps the planets gather in an unusual meeting, as if the gods are holding council in the heavens. Nothing escapes the watchful night sky, and so the people keep watch too, looking for comfort and guidance in those celestial patterns. It is a deeply serene feeling, knowing that the same stars return in their seasons. The Mesopotamians saw in that reliability the promises of their gods. Every year, the stars and planets replayed divine dramas above, and every year the world went on under their steady light. In spring, the constellation of the Bull rose at dusk, a sign of strength for the new planting season. In the heat of summer, the Lion dominated the sky, roaring his fiery presence and reminding people of the sun's fierce power. As autumn came, a maiden-like figure, perhaps what we call Virgo today, appeared after sunset, which they linked to the goddess of grain, hinting at the harvest. When winter's chill set in, the night brought the figure of a goatfish, Capricornus in later terms, dipping low, a strange hybrid creature that spoke to the dualities of life and the mystery of beginnings in endings. Each seasonal star was more than a timing marker. It was a reassurance that the cosmos was in order and life's cycle would continue. Under such a sky, one can imagine the sense of protection and meaning the Mesopotamians felt. The stars were not indifferent pinpoints. They were caring or cautionary eyes of the divine. What might have been a source of fear in other cultures, the vast unknown darkness, was, for them, a familiar blanket dotted with reassuring lights. If a star god sent a message through a new star or an eclipse, it showed that human lives and cosmic forces were intertwined. In their cities of mud brick and canals, they built tall ziggurats and temples to mirror that link. Stepping stones toward the heavens, where priests would offer sacrifices and interpreters would watch for holy signs above. The architecture itself echoed the mountains that they thought the gods favoured as dwellings, bringing the earth a little closer to the sky. So strong was their bond with the starry realm that the people of Mesopotamia wove astronomy into their daily governance and religion. Kings consulted the stars before making big decisions, whether to declare war, when to hold festivals, when to start building a new canal. It is as if the kingdom itself breathed in rhythm with the cosmos. Imagine a royal court on a night when Mars glowed menacingly red near the full moon. Advisors and astrologer priests might murmur that the god of war stands near the protector moon, an omen perhaps of conflict on the horizon. The king listens in the torchlight, weighing heaven's hint. Maybe he postpones his campaign, or performs a ceremony to pacify Nergal's fiery temper. In this way, the stars quietly influence the course of earthly events. Far from being fearful under the immense sky, the Mesopotamians found comfort in knowing that the gods overhead were watching and guiding. Each night was an opportunity to hear those gods. In the dim glow of constellations, they found reassurance that the world had structure and meaning. And so, beneath the flickering heavens, they lived their lives in sync with the cosmos, planting, harvesting, building, and dreaming, all to the silent music of the stars. Just as the people of Mesopotamia looked to their stars for meaning, in another land of desert sands and river waters, a parallel reverence for the night sky was unfolding. Hundreds of miles to the west, along the Nile River, ancient Egyptians too gazed up and found their own destiny written among the stars. Night falls over the sandy banks of the Nile, and 1,000,000 stars bloom in the Egyptian sky. The great river flows quietly, reflecting the starlight in shimmering ribbons upon its surface. Out in the western desert, the dark silhouette of a pyramid cuts into the starry vault above. In a nearby field, crickets trill among the reeds, joining the gentle sounds of the night. Under this cosmic canopy, the ancient Egyptians looked upward with a reverence as deep as the stillness around them. To them, these were not just stars. They were the beacons of eternity, guiding souls and marking the presence of gods in the sky. In Egyptian belief, the heavens were intimately linked with the journey of the soul. Above the world of the living arched the goddess Nut. Her body was the sky itself, painted dark blue and freckled with stars. Each evening, as dusk spread, Nut was said to swallow the fiery sun, and each morning she gave birth to it anew at dawn. Her star-studded form stretched protectively over the earth, separating it from the infinite chaos beyond. They also imagined the sky as a kind of vast cosmic river or ocean, mirroring their own Nile. Stars were like celestial lamps or boats drifting along this dark river above. Each night, the sun god sailed across it after being swallowed by Nut, and each morning he was reborn from her womb. Thus, the sky's deep blue expanse was not emptiness, but a life-giving water of the heavens, supporting the journey of stars and sun alike. Egyptians would gaze at Nut's glittering expanse and feel comforted. They were watching the eternal cycle of death and rebirth play out above, as the stars moved across her belly. For the people of the Nile, the north sky held particular significance. In the deep of night, if one looked toward the horizon where the Nile pointed northward, they would see stars that never vanished. Unlike others, these stars did not rise and set, but circled slowly around a fixed point. The Egyptians called them the imperishable, or undying stars. They were eternal sentinels, shining every night of the year, never dipping below the horizon to the realm of death. To become one of those stars was to live forever. So the highest hope in the Egyptian afterlife was often expressed as becoming an imperishable star in the northern heavens, joining the blessed company of undying lights. These same stars provided practical guidance too. A sailor on the Nile on a clear night could gauge his orientation by noting the fixed stars of the north as a reference, and desert travellers likewise steered by them, trusting those unsetting lights to keep them on course. Imagine a royal funeral at the pyramid of an ancient pharaoh. Deep inside the cool stone chamber, the air is heavy with incense and the flicker of oil lamps. Priests chant sacred words that echo softly off the hieroglyph-covered walls. The pharaoh's body, carefully mummified and adorned with gold, rests in its sarcophagus. This is not merely a burial, it is a launch. As the priests intone spells from the pyramid texts, they speak of the sky. They call upon the gods to open the doors of heaven for this soul. "O Pharaoh," they murmur, "may you rise up and join the imperishable stars. May you never die, just as Orion never dies in the night." One invocation from those walls pleads, "May you rise to the sky. May you become one of the imperishable stars that live forever." In that dark chamber, the carved spells proclaim that the king will ascend on sunbeams or climb a celestial ladder to the stars. Some texts even urge the king's soul to fly up as a falcon, for the falcon's domain is the open sky. As night envelops the world outside, one can imagine the spirit of the pharaoh, freed at last from his earthly body, soaring out into the starry vault to take his place among the constellations. The ancient Egyptians indeed identified certain stars and constellations with their gods and legends. High above, one of the most distinctive groups of stars is what we know as Orion, a constellation of a tall figure with a belt of 3 bright stars. The Egyptians saw in this pattern the god Osiris, lord of the underworld and resurrection. Osiris was more than a death god. He embodied the promise of new life after death. And there in the sky, Orion Osiris would appear each night, striding across heaven. Just behind him in the sky followed a bright star, Sirius, the most brilliant star visible from Earth. To Egyptian eyes, this dazzling light was the goddess Isis, the faithful wife of Osiris. In their mythology, Isis had searched for Osiris after his death, ultimately helping to revive him. And so it seemed fitting that the star of Isis chased her husband Osiris across the heavens every night. The relationship of Orion and Sirius became a cosmic drama. Each year, Orion would vanish from the sky for a time, as it does during the bright summer months. And not long after, Sirius too disappeared in the sun's glare. This absence marked the mourning of Isis and the temporary death of Osiris. But then, in the pre-dawn of summer, something spectacular happened. Sirius reappeared on the horizon just before sunrise, for the first time in months. This event, called the heliacal rising of Sirius, was met with jubilation in Egypt. It coincided with the annual flooding of the Nile, the life-bringing inundation that refreshed the land. To the Egyptians, it was as if Isis's brilliant tear of joy at finding Osiris again fell into the Nile, flooding the river and renewing the land. The heliacal rising of Sirius signalled the new year and the promise that Osiris would once more bring life out of death. In the temples, priests watched for that first glimmer of Sirius at dawn. When they saw it, they knew the cycle of life was continuing by divine grace. All across Egypt, from the delta marshes to the cataracts of the upper Nile, people lived in sync with these celestial signs. Farmers knew when to expect the floodwaters by the stars, and that knowledge was wrapped in their religious understanding of the world. An everyday fisherman on the Nile might not recite the lofty pyramid texts, but he would still notice the stars. Perhaps as he cast his nets under a clear night, he would recognize Orion sinking toward the western horizon and know that summer was on its way. Or he might see the star of Sopdet, Sirius, rising late in the night and smile, aware that soon the river would rise too, bringing fish and fertile mud. In Egypt, practical life and spiritual life were intertwined under the stars. The timing of agriculture, the festivals of gods, and the hopes for eternal life all aligned with the rhythms of the sky. Back in the grand temples and tombs, the connection with the stars was made even more explicit. Many temples were built with precise orientations to celestial events. For instance, certain sanctuaries were aligned so that on a specific star's heliacal rising, or on the solstice sunrise, the first light would travel straight through the temple and illuminate the innermost shrine. One can imagine standing in a shadowy temple pre-dawn, waiting in silence, until suddenly a beam of light from a star or the sun pierces the darkness and lights up the statue of a god. Such moments must have felt like the heavens and earth were touching. At Abu Simbel, far to the south, a temple of Pharaoh Ramses II was constructed, so the sunrise on 2 days of the year would send rays deep into the mountain, illuminating statues of the pharaoh and gods, a celestial endorsement of his reign. That example is solar, but other temples had stellar connections. The temple of Isis on the island of Philae was oriented toward the point on the horizon where Sirius rose. Each year, when the star of Isis appeared, its light would have fallen in line with the temple's main axis, heralding the goddess's return. Some even say the 3 great pyramids of Giza were arranged to mirror the 3 stars of Orion's belt, aligning the resting places of pharaohs with the celestial figure of Osiris. In fact, Egyptian builders performed a ritual called the stretching of the cord to lay out new sacred structures in harmony with the sky. Under a night sky, the chief architect and priests, under the guidance of the goddess Seshat, patroness of writing and measurement, would sight a chosen star along the horizon. They would then stretch a cord in alignment with that star, marking an axis that often corresponded to true north, or the direction of a significant rising star. Through this celestial surveying, temples and pyramids were oriented with astonishing precision. It was as if they were imprinting the heavens onto the earth, ensuring that each stone building resonated with the cosmic order above. Inside tombs as well, the stars were ever present. The ceilings of royal tombs in the Valley of the Kings, and even some of the earlier pyramids, were often painted deep blue and sprinkled with gold stars, as if to wrap the deceased in the very fabric of Nut's sky. In the tomb of Queen Hatshepsut's architect, Senenmut, a remarkable star map adorns the ceiling, showing constellations and celestial boats. In the Valley of the Kings, ceilings of burial chambers were often painted a deep midnight blue and dotted with 5-pointed golden stars, transforming the tomb into a miniature firmament. Pharaohs would rest eternally under a painted sky, their sarcophagi surrounded by constellations and protective star goddesses, awaiting their rebirth among the actual stars above. The Egyptians had mapped the skies and placed those maps in burial chambers, perhaps to guide the souls in navigating the heavens. Some sarcophagi, coffins, also had protective texts known as books of the sky or star clocks. These showed the hours of the night, defined by the rising of specific stars, essentially star calendars to help the departed soul know the time as it journeyed with Ra, the sun god, through the 12 hours of night. They had identified approximately 36 star decans that rose in sequence throughout the night year-round. Each decan's appearance signaled a new hour of the night. By tracking these, priests could tell time in the dark, long before mechanical clocks. Some tomb paintings show rows of small star symbols or deities, each representing those decan stars and the hours they governed. By consulting these star charts, a learned soul or a vigilant priest could know which hour of the night it was, by simply watching which constellation was emerging on the horizon. Ra's journey was central to Egyptian cosmology and tied deeply to the stars as well. They believed that every night, the sun god Ra sailed in his boat through the underworld, which they sometimes envisioned as a mirror image sky beneath the horizon, or simply as a dangerous river that ran below, parallel to the Nile. With him travelled a crew of gods, and the blessed souls of those who had earned a place on this divine bark. As Ra's boat navigated through darkness, it was attacked by the great serpent Apophis, embodiment of chaos, seeking to stop the sun from being reborn. But with the help of protective deities, and perhaps even the souls of departed kings lending their strength, Ra would defeat the serpent and emerge at dawn. When Egyptians looked at the band of the Milky Way stretched across the night, they could imagine it as a celestial Nile, a river of stars upon which Ra's boat sailed. Some called it the winding waterway. In fact, texts speak of the deceased king ascending to the sky to sail on the winding waterway among the stars, joining Ra's eternal circuit. The soft glow of the Milky Way might have inspired them to believe that a river of light flows in heaven, just as the Nile flows on earth. Despite these grand cosmic visions reserved for pharaohs and gods, even the common person in Egypt had a relationship with the stars. On any clear evening, families relaxing on their flat rooftops would see the familiar stars appear one by one. They might not have all been versed in formal star names, but they certainly had folk tales and simple observations. They gave meaning to simple moments. For instance, spotting the first star at twilight was seen as a time to make a wish or say a prayer for loved ones. The consistent patterns overhead became familiar friends. Parents could predict when the cool season was coming by the return of certain stars at dusk, and children learned to trace the outlines of the Great Bear or Orion as easily as those of their kite or pet cat. Perhaps a mother would point to a certain bright star twinkling in the west and tell her child, "That could be the soul of your great-grandfather watching over us." It was common in many cultures to link stars with ancestors, and Egypt was no exception. The idea that good people might become stars was a comforting one. It meant those who passed on were not gone, but shining down as guardians in the night. The Egyptian imagination also peopled the sky with fantastic beings. Some star groups were seen as gods in animal form. There was said to be a heavenly cow, likely related to the goddess Hathor, and indeed the Milky Way could be envisioned as the milk spilled by a divine cow across the heavens. One constellation was viewed as the leg of a bull. In later Egyptian art, we see the Big Dipper depicted as the foreleg of an ox, a symbol connected to the god Set, or perhaps to Osiris, depending on the tale. They also recognized a grouping as a seated goddess, perhaps part of Cassiopeia or another northern pattern, and others as boats or creatures. Each figure in the sky played some part in their mythology. For example, the foreleg, the Big Dipper, was sometimes said to be a leg cut from a bull, representing an enemy of Horus, placed in the sky as a reminder of divine victory. Such stories, while not known to every farmer, were part of the rich tapestry of how priests and scribes understood the cosmos. Over centuries, Egyptian star watchers became skilled at predicting heavenly events. They noticed the cycle of eclipses. Though solar eclipses were rare in Egypt's skies, lunar eclipses occasionally turned the moon to copper, and surely drew notice. A red darkened moon might have been seen as the eye of Horus wounded, or as a bad omen needing prayers to the moon god Khonsu to heal it. Comets and meteors would have been rarer still, but when observed, likely interpreted as either divine messengers or potentially warnings of disorder. The Egyptians, like the Mesopotamians, believed that the gods could send messages via the sky. Though the detailed art of astrological omen reading never became as systematized in early Egypt as it did in Babylon, by later periods, Egypt too embraced astrology, particularly after Greek influence, when zodiac signs appeared on temple ceilings. But even long before that, the basic notion was present. The heavens and earth reflected each other's fates. If the king was just and Maat, the principle of cosmic order, prevailed, the sky would bless Egypt with favourable signs: timely floods, bright stars, and clear skies. In times of turmoil, perhaps the heavens might show irregularities that mirrored the unrest. Crucially, the stars provided the Egyptians with a sense of cosmic permanence amid the ebbs and flows of mortal life. Just as the pyramids they built were meant to stand for eternity, so too did the undying stars assure them that some part of the human story would last forever. When an Egyptian stood in the desert night, far from the glow of lamps, he saw essentially the same stars that his ancestors had seen for uncounted generations. This continuity reinforced the belief in an eternal cosmic order upheld by the gods. It gave them comfort that though individual lives passed, the overarching design of seasons, of Nile floods, of daily sunrises and nightly starshine was eternal and benevolent. The night sky in Egypt was not merely a backdrop, it was an active participant in their culture. It guided the architects of their monuments, the prayers of their priests, the work of their farmers, and the dreams of every family gazing at the sky. To lie on the cool sands and watch Orion and Sirius gliding westward was to witness a divine story in motion. To see the steady wheeling of the circumpolar stars was to be assured that there was a place beyond death where life continued in radiant form. Every twinkle overhead was a reminder. Life and death were part of a great cycle, a story written in light. As the Egyptians read their destiny in the constellations and looked to the sky for spiritual reassurance, the idea that the heavens could reveal one's future or fate was taking shape in various forms. In Mesopotamia, Egypt, and beyond, people began to believe that the patterns in the sky could guide not just souls in the afterlife, but the very course of events on Earth. They started to search the stars for hints of what was to come, a quest to read the future in the stars, a practice that would echo through the ages. Beneath the same sky that Mesopotamian and Egyptian stargazers once studied, others soon learned to decipher celestial signs for guidance and prophecy. Across ancient civilizations, a belief took root that by observing the heavens, one could glimpse what the future might hold. This idea resonated in royal courts and rural villages alike, weaving astrology, the art of reading destiny in the stars, into the fabric of human culture. Picture a scholar in Babylon, late one clear night, atop a high ziggurat tower. He peers intently at the sky, his eyes tracing the positions of the wandering planets among the familiar constellations. A faint smell of incense from the evening's temple rites still hangs in the air. The scholar's robe ruffles gently in the night breeze as he scans the sky. At his feet lies a clay tablet covered in damp clay, ready to receive his careful impressions. Tonight, Jupiter, the king of planets, shines near the crest of the sky, and reddish Mars lingers low on the horizon. The scholar-priest furrows his brow. Such a configuration could be meaningful. He recalls the records of his forefathers, inscribed on countless tablets stored in the temple archives. These records, part of a vast compendium called the Enuma Anu Enlil, are like a dictionary of the sky's language. Page after page, or rather tablet after tablet, list omens and their interpretations. If Venus disappears on the 7th day, famine will come. If a lunar eclipse occurs in the month of Tashritu, the king will face danger, and so forth. By the glow of a flickering oil lamp, our scholar finds the line that matches tonight's sky, Jupiter and Mars in a particular dance. He presses cuneiform wedges into the clay noting his prediction. Perhaps it means a distant kingdom will send envoys, or that conflict is brewing at the borders. Come morning, this tablet will be delivered to the king's astrologer, advising the ruler on how to prepare for what the heavens portend. In Mesopotamia, especially during the later Assyrian and Babylonian periods, such scenes were common. Astrology was a serious state affair. Kings employed learned men to watch the sky all night, every night. These watchers would send rapid messengers or letters to the palace whenever something noteworthy happened above. An unexpected eclipse, the rising of a brilliant comet with a flowing tail, or an unusual conjunction of two planets drawing near each other. To them, these were not random. They were like letters from the gods, and it was the astrologer's duty to decipher and read them aloud. Imagine the court of an Assyrian king in the capital of Nineveh at dawn. The king sits on his throne at dawn, receiving reports. Tall bronze braziers cast dancing shadows on the palace walls as dawn's first light creeps into the throne room. One report might read, "Last night a halo formed around the moon. It is written that this signifies a coming plague. Offer sacrifices to the god Nana, moon, and let the populace be warned to purify themselves." Another report might jubilantly announce, "Jupiter, Marduk's star, shines twice as bright this month, a sign of the great god's favour." The king may proceed with his plans to build a new canal. In response, the monarch might alter decisions. Perhaps the king, upon hearing of a dire eclipse, removes his crown and dons humble garb, heading to the temple to pray for mercy. A powerful ruler brought to piety by a shadow on the moon. So seriously did these ancient rulers take celestial omens that they devised ways to trick fate itself. For example, if the stars predicted the death of the king, such as through a lunar eclipse interpreted as an ill omen for the ruler, the court might enact a clever ruse. They would place a substitute on the throne, perhaps a condemned man or a minor official, and crown him king for 100 days, while the real king disguised himself as an ordinary person. Often this proxy would be treated lavishly for those few months, addressed as royalty, all the while knowing his fate was sealed. Any evil destined for the king would, they believed, fall upon the impostor instead. Indeed, after the interval passed, the true king would resume the throne, and the unfortunate substitute, having fulfilled the omen, might quietly disappear. By such measures, earthly powers tried to negotiate with the powers of fate written in the sky. Beyond Mesopotamia, the practice of reading the future in the stars spread far and wide. The ancient Greeks, inheriting knowledge from Babylon, became great sky watchers themselves. They gave us the word astrology from their language, astron, meaning star, and logos, meaning word or reasoning. To the Greeks, the cosmos was an orderly clockwork, and some philosophers believed that heavenly bodies influenced the earthly realm in a rational way. By the Hellenistic period, the last few centuries BCE, astrology transformed into a more personal guide, not just for kings, but for ordinary people too. In the bustling city of Alexandria in Egypt, where Greek and Egyptian cultures mingled, one can imagine learned men drawing circles on parchment under the flicker of an oil lamp in a portico overlooking the great lighthouse. They divided the sky into 12 sections, corresponding to the zodiac signs that the Babylonians had named. They marked the positions of the sun, moon, and planets at the exact moment of a person's birth, and, through complex calculations and interpretation, produced a personal horoscope. For the first time in history, the fate of individuals, not only kingdoms, was being charted in the positions of the stars at their birth. If one was born when Mars was ascendant in the sign of the Ram, Aries, one might be said to have a fiery, warlike nature. If Venus shone brightly in the house of the Bull, Taurus, perhaps a life of comfort and love was destined. This was a more intimate kind of star reading, one that promised to unveil character and fortune on a personal scale. The idea that each person has a star at their birth caught on throughout the Greco-Roman world. It became common to say that a fortunate person was born under a lucky star. Even Roman emperors consulted astrologers to guide their rule and to choose auspicious times for coronations or battles. The Emperor Augustus, for instance, was said to have had his horoscope drawn and proudly displayed Capricorn, his birth sign, on his coins as a token of his destined greatness. However, not every powerful man welcomed the idea that stars could predict events, especially their downfall. There are tales of emperors like Tiberius and Domitian who kept court astrologers but also persecuted those who cast unfavorable horoscopes, fearing conspiracies fueled by celestial predictions. Celestial phenomena could also be spun into powerful symbols. When Julius Caesar was assassinated in 44 BCE, a great comet appeared in the sky shortly thereafter, blazing for 7 days. The Roman public and leaders were astonished at this new star. They interpreted it as the soul of Caesar taking its place among the gods. In fact, coins were later struck with the image of a star, commemorating Caesar's divine ascent. What might have been feared as a dire omen was transformed into a reassurance that Rome's beloved leader was not gone, but shining eternally from the heavens. While the Mediterranean world refined personal astrology, other ancient cultures developed their own unique traditions of star divination. Far to the east, in ancient China, the imperial court maintained astronomer priests whose duties mirrored those of Babylon, yet with a distinct philosophy. The Chinese viewed the emperor as the son of heaven, and any heavenly signs were seen as comments on his reign. A comet streaking across the sky, or an unexpected eclipse, was no trivial matter. It could signal that the emperor had lost the mandate of heaven due to misrule, or that natural disasters were on the way. Chinese court records from millennia ago meticulously detail such events. A guest star, their term for a new star or nova, appearing in the sky, a broom star, comet, sweeping ominously, or the precise timings of eclipses. One famous account tells of 2 royal astronomers, thousands of years ago, who failed to predict a solar eclipse. Their negligence was seen as such a grave dereliction of duty that the emperor ordered their execution. Their story would serve as a cautionary tale in China for generations. The heavens must never be neglected. Thus, Chinese stargazers worked under immense pressure. Their calculations had to be exact, and their interpretations carefully framed, so as to counsel the emperor without causing panic. If a comet appeared, they might write in the court annals, "A broom star has appeared in the east during the 3rd moon. It is a sign that the state must clear away corruption and renew virtue." This was advice couched in cosmic terms. The night sky for them was a vast canvas where the will of heaven was written in real time. These court astronomers would often stand on high observation towers through long nights, measuring the sky with simple sighting tubes and quadrants. The ancient Mayans of Central America also looked to the sky to guide their actions, particularly entranced by the planet Venus. Priests in Maya cities like Chichen Itza or Tikal made detailed tables of Venus's appearances as the morning star and evening star. On the summit of a pyramid temple deep in the rainforest, a Maya priest would watch for Venus's rise, his ears attuned to the roar of distant howler monkeys echoing in the night. They understood its cycle with impressive accuracy. Why? Because they believed Venus, which they associated with warfare, signalled opportune times to engage in battle or make peace. A Maya ruler might plan a raid on a neighbouring city only when Venus rose at dawn, interpreting its blinding arrival in the morning sky as the celestial god of war leading the way. The Maya left behind codices, books of folded bark, with pages filled with glyphs and numbers charting the movements of Venus, the moon, and constellations, all interwoven into their prophecies and calendar of rituals. For them, reading the future in the stars was not a pastime. It was integral to statecraft and religion, determining when to crown a new king, when to offer certain sacrifices, or when to expect drought or prosperity. In the Indian subcontinent, a rich astrological tradition also flourished from ancient times. Vedic priests observed the movements of the planets and moon carefully, weaving them into calendars and rituals. By the first millennium BCE and into the following era, Indian astrologers, called Jyotishis, were casting detailed horoscopes, much like their Alexandrian counterparts. They divided the sky differently, not just into 12 zodiac signs, but into 27 lunar mansions, marking the path of the moon with fine precision. Each of these lunar stations carried mythic names and was believed to influence everything from personality traits to the success of a journey. Kings in ancient and medieval India often consulted their court astrologers to choose the most auspicious moment for battles, marriages, or coronations, under the shade of temple courtyards, or by flickering lamplight in libraries of palm leaf manuscripts. These learned men studied the heavens and penned their own textbooks on the art of fate reading, blending their indigenous star lore with insights borrowed from Greek astrology after contacts were made along trade routes. We can picture an astrologer in ancient Ujjain, seated under a banyan tree by the river at twilight, marking the positions of planets on a palm leaf chart. As temple bells ring in the distance, he might advise a merchant on which date the stars favour for a long caravan journey, ensuring divine winds will be at his back. To this day, many of the star and planet positions identified by those ancient Jyotishis continue to be used in modern Indian tradition when families seek auspicious timings or match horoscopes for marriage. Throughout the medieval era, astrology remained enmeshed with daily life and scholarly pursuits. In the Islamic Golden Age, scholars in places like Baghdad, Damascus, and Cordoba translated and expanded upon Greek astrological works, preserving them for posterity. These scholar astrologers were also eminent astronomers. They refined star catalogues, gave many stars the Arabic names still used today, and invented new instruments like the astrolabe to observe the sky. Names like Aldebaran, Fomalhaut, and Rigel, which we use to this day, are a legacy of their celestial catalogues. Their knowledge flowed into medieval Europe, where astrology found a home in universities alongside arithmetic and medicine. Doctors consulted the positions of the stars when diagnosing illnesses, believing different zodiac signs ruled various parts of the body. Farmers relied on almanacs that combined celestial observations with practical advice, scheduling plantings by the moon and stars. Even deeply religious figures often quietly respected astrology's claims, seeking to reconcile it with their faith by suggesting that the stars inclined, rather than compelled one's fate. Astrology's language became part of everyday speech. People spoke of one's fortune in the ascendant, or a disastrous event, a word that literally means ill-starred. In medieval Europe, one of the most famous omens was Halley's Comet in the year 1066. A bright comet with a long tail appeared in the skies of April that year, alarming many. King Harold of England and his people reportedly viewed it with dread, suspecting it foretold great upheaval. Sure enough, later that year, Duke William of Normandy invaded England. After Harold's defeat at the Battle of Hastings, the Normans even wove the comet into the Bayeux tapestry, depicting men pointing up at the fearsome celestial apparition. They stitched the Latin words isti mirant stella. They marvel at the star. To them, the comet had indeed heralded the fall of a king and the rise of a new one. Such stories, passed down through generations, only reinforced the age-old belief that the fates of entire kingdoms were written in the movements of the heavens. Under the same heavens, the old impulse to find meaning above persisted, unbroken by time. At night, families everywhere could gaze up and wonder if those shining points of light were not just distant fires, but also carriers of personal meaning. Perhaps a certain star, rising at the moment of a child's birth, would watch over them through life. Perhaps an especially bright meteor shower was a harbinger of a bountiful harvest, or, conversely, a warning of troubled times. Many cultures developed the practice of making a wish when a shooting star was seen, a gentle superstition that if you focus your hope as the heavens send a sudden sign, the cosmos might hear you. This charming custom is a far echo of the old belief that unexpected celestial events carry significance for our lives below. Despite differences in technique and belief, a common thread ran through all these cultural practices: solace and guidance. Whether gazing from a ziggurat in Babylon, a temple rooftop in Thebes, or a humble rice field in ancient China, people found messages of hope glittering above. In a world that could be unpredictable, floods, droughts, wars, and fortunes turning overnight, people found comfort in the idea that the heavens above had a plan, or at least a forewarning to offer. The stars became a vast, silent scripture where one could look for reassurance that life's twists and turns were not random. If a journey was to be undertaken, one might consult an almanac to choose a day when the moon and stars were favourable. If two people were to marry, some might check if their stars aligned propitiously. Even when calamity struck, saying, "It was written in the stars," gave a sense that some order, however inscrutable, underlay the event. Through the ages, astrology and astronomy were twin siblings, often practiced by the same scholars. The astrologers had to be astronomers first. They needed to accurately track planetary movements and predict eclipses. In doing so, they advanced humanity's understanding of the cosmos. The desire to read the future in stars led to careful observation and early scientific catalogues. Over time, patterns emerged that turned out not to be omens, but natural cycles. Yet even those natural cycles were seen as part of a grand cosmic rhythm affecting life on Earth. The motions of the moon, for instance, clearly influenced the tides of the ocean. As above, so below, went the saying in later mystical traditions, suggesting that celestial patterns mirror earthly ones. Many took this to heart, believing that each person's small world was a reflection of the greater world above. We can imagine a late scholar in antiquity, perhaps in Greece or Rome, slowly coming to a realization as he charts planet paths year after year. He notices that an eclipse that spelled fear for one generation could be calculated and anticipated by the next, losing some of its terror. The language of the heavens was becoming less mysterious as mathematics and careful recording took the place of purely prophetic interpretation. And yet, the allure of astrology did not wane. If anything, it grew. People are ever curious about what awaits them, and the stars seem so steadfast and impartial. What better notary of fate than these incorruptible lights in the sky? So the practice endured through the fall of empires and the rise of new religions. In time, New faiths would sometimes challenge astrology. Yet even then, the cultural habit of looking up for answers was hard to suppress. As we leave the world of antiquity, we carry with us this rich legacy of stargazing for meaning. One can still easily picture a traveller in a desert long ago, pausing at night to consult the stars for direction, both literal and spiritual. The constellations that guided caravans also guided prayers. The planet that shone bright on a king's coronation night became part of that king's legend. The comet that appeared in the sky at the death of a ruler became a symbol of that soul taking its place among the stars. All these ancient star-filled stories and practices set the stage for a new understanding that would come later, an understanding of what those stars truly are. And yet the human desire to find meaning in them never faded. Even as thinkers began to demystify the cosmos, turning points of knowledge were often accompanied by wonder and a sense of destiny, as if human intellect itself was guided by the stars. The line between science and mysticism was once thin under the night sky, as scholars and sages alike craned their necks upward in pursuit of answers. Our journey through the early chapters of humanity's relationship with the cosmos has revealed a profound truth. Whether as gods, as guides to the afterlife, or as portents of the future, the stars have always been more than mere lights in the sky. They have been our storytellers, our teachers, and our companions in the dark. But this journey is far from over. The story of how we see the stars continues to evolve, growing with each new insight and each new legend. Just beyond the horizon of the era we've explored lies another realm of discovery, one where the mystery of the stars meets the curiosity of scientific minds armed with new tools like the telescope. In this coming age, the cosmos will be probed in ways our ancestors could scarcely imagine, revealing secrets beyond folklore. Yet even as new explanations emerge to join the old legends, the same sky will continue to inspire wonder. The night sky is about to be understood in ways our ancient ancestors could scarcely imagine, yet their wonder and reverence will remain very much alive in those who continue to gaze upward. The last embers of the campfire glow under a canopy of ancient stars as our story continues. The simple campsites of old have given way to villages and great cities, but the sky above remains unchanged. Thousands of years have passed, yet the night sky remains the same vast tapestry of lights. In the cradle of civilization, where the first cities rose from mud brick and dreams, our ancestors still looked up in wonder. The flicker of oil lamps replaces the campfire, but the constellations overhead continue their eternal slow dance. Part of a great continuity, the cosmic stories carried forward, whispered from generation to generation under those familiar stars, binding past and present. In ancient Mesopotamia, between the winding rivers Tigris and Euphrates, the night was alive with meaning. Here, in the world's first great cities, people built towering ziggurats, step pyramids of brick, reaching toward the heavens. As stars emerged one by one in the twilight, a hush fell over the bustling streets below. Only the dim glow of hearth fires and flickering torches on mud brick walls remained. On such a warm night, a priest astronomer might climb the steps to stand atop the ziggurat and gaze at the stars. From that high perch above the sleeping city, the sky stretched endlessly, a great domed canopy of shimmering points. It felt both immense and intimate at once, like a jeweled blanket thrown over the world. Each star, each constellation, was more than a light. It was a story, a sign from the gods twinkling in the darkness. The people of Mesopotamia depended on the rhythms of nature, the flooding of rivers, the change of seasons, and they turned to the sky for guidance. Over generations, they noted how certain stars rose at dawn or set at dusk at key times of year. The appearance of particular stars or constellations signaled when to sow and when to harvest. For example, when a tiny cluster of stars we now call the Pleiades vanished in the west at dusk, it meant spring was approaching and time to prepare the fields. When those stars reappeared in the pre-dawn sky months later, the harvest season was at hand. The night sky became their calendar and their compass, a cosmic clock established by the gods. To these early farmers and city builders, it seemed the heavens above and life below were intimately connected, one reflecting the other. In the beginning, they told, the universe was born from a great cosmic struggle. Around hearth fires and in temple courtyards, storytellers recounted how the young god Marduk battled the dragon of chaos, Tiamat, to create the world. In that primordial time, nothing was yet separated. No sky, no earth, only swirling waters of chaos. Marduk's mighty winds churned those waters, and in a thunderous clash, he split the dragon's monstrous body in two. From one half of Tiamat, he fashioned the arch of the sky, raising it up as the heavens. From the other half, he formed the solid ground and the waters below. Then Marduk set about adorning his new creation. He placed the moon to sail through the night sky, and ordained the path of the sun to light the day. One by one, he hung the stars in the firmament like lanterns, arranging them into patterns to guide and delight. And so the heavens and earth were formed, all by divine design. To the people of Babylon and Sumer, this was not just a story, but a truth woven into the sky itself. The very dome of stars above was the handiwork of the gods, shaped from the remnants of a cosmic dragon. Each tiny light was a deliberate creation. In their eyes, when they looked up at the glittering arch of night, they saw the magnificent aftermath of that divine battle. The stars were celestial embers, scattered across the heavens by the gods' decree, orderly and shining, where once there had been only chaos. Each spring, at their New Year festival, Babylonian priests recited the epic of creation aloud, celebrating Marduk's victory anew. By retelling the story, they believed they were helping to renew the world, keeping chaos at bay for another year under those orderly, shining stars. As the sky turned through the seasons, certain star patterns stood out, prompting stories of heroes and creatures to explain them. One of the most beloved tales in Mesopotamia was that of Gilgamesh, the legendary king of Uruk. It was said that Gilgamesh's adventures were written in the stars. On a clear winter night, one can find him there, a mighty figure striding across the sky. 3 stars in a neat row form his belt. A faint red star marks one shoulder, and a bright blue-white star gleams at one of his knees. We know this constellation today as Orion, the hunter. But long ago, the Mesopotamians saw their hero Gilgamesh in those stars, locked in eternal combat with a bull. The story goes that Gilgamesh once angered Inanna, the great goddess of love and war. In her fury, the goddess sent down the bull of heaven to punish him. This supernatural bull snorted and stamped, cracking the earth and bringing drought to the land. Gilgamesh, along with his loyal friend Enkidu, faced the fearsome beast on the plains outside the city, dust swirling around them under a darkening sky. Enkidu grasped the bull's tail to hold the beast back, and the earth trembled beneath its hooves. Gilgamesh seized the moment, fearless and determined, as he moved in to deliver the fateful blow. To honor this epic struggle, the ancients said the gods placed Gilgamesh among the stars. There he shines, with a bow in one hand and an axe in the other, forever poised against the bull he battled. The nearby constellation of the bull, what we call Taurus, became the very bull of heaven in their night sky lore. Even now, Orion and Taurus face each other in the winter sky, as if reliving that cosmic confrontation every year. Each time those stars rose, the people remembered the courage of Gilgamesh and the watchful presence of the goddess who tested him. On clear evenings, a Mesopotamian gaze would find the cosmic bull and hero twinkling silently above, their story written in starlight for all time. But triumph soon turned to tragedy. In the aftermath of the bull's defeat, the gods decreed that Enkidu must die for the part he played in slaying a beast of heaven. Gilgamesh was heartbroken by the loss of his dear friend. Many nights he wandered the wilds, looking up at the brilliant stars and pondering the mystery of life and death. Under that endless sky, he realized that even the greatest of heroes cannot escape mortality. Refusing to accept this fate, Gilgamesh set out on a daring journey to find the secret of eternal life, traveling to the ends of the earth. In the end, he returned to Uruk as mortal as ever, but wiser, understanding that immortality lives not in the flesh, but in the memories and stories we leave behind. His own story, after all, was now written in the stars, shining above for future generations to remember. Gilgamesh and the bull were just one chapter of the sky's library. The priests and scholars of Mesopotamia identified dozens of constellations and named them after familiar beasts, tools, and gods. Over generations, they mapped a celestial belt stretching across the sky, a path along which the sun, moon, and wandering planets travelled. This band they divided into 12 sections, each with its own constellation sign. A great celestial wheel of the zodiac was thus born, marking the passage of time and fate as the heavens turned. They wove an entire atlas of the sky. There was the great lion stalking the celestial fields, whose rising brought the fierce heat of summer. A giant scorpion crawled along the ecliptic, its stars appearing when the harvest ended and winter's darkness neared. They marked out a pair of heroes, the great twins, standing side by side, weapons in hand, said to guard the gates to the underworld. A mysterious creature with a goat's head and fish's tail, the goatfish, surfaced in the stars to announce the return of the life-giving rains after the solstice. Every pattern held significance, a story or a seasonal omen that tied the heavens to the earth below. To these ancient astronomer priests, the wandering stars, the planets, were living deities moving through the constellations. The bright evening star that glowed at sunset was Ishtar, Inanna, goddess of love and war, gazing down on the world. When that brilliant star vanished for weeks at a time, as Venus periodically does, they said the goddess had journeyed to the underworld in sorrow. And when she rose again in the morning sky, it was Inanna returning triumphantly, bringing light and hope. Reddish Mars was Nergal, the hot-blooded god of war. If Mars burned especially bright and red, it was an omen that Nergal was restless, perhaps foreshadowing conflict on Earth. Golden Jupiter, steady and grand, was Marduk himself, king of the heavens, watching over the order of the sky. When an unusual celestial event occurred, a comet streaking by, an eclipse swallowing the sun, or a star appearing where none had been before, it was seen as a message or warning. Kings would call on their star readers to interpret these signs. Was the gods' favour waning? Would floods or victory or famine follow? They believed the heavens foretold these answers, if only one knew how to read them. On clay tablets, using a reed stylus, Babylonian scribes recorded the movements of planets and the appearances of stars year after year. These records, painstakingly kept, allowed them to predict recurring cycles. They learned that the bright star Ishtar, our planet Venus, would vanish for weeks at a time and then reappear on the opposite horizon. They learned when eclipses might occur by noting patterns over decades. Such knowledge was guarded, passed from master to apprentice, and held in the highest esteem. Imagine an aged scholar in a robe trimmed with stars, poring over cuneiform tablets by lamplight, correlating celestial events with the fates of kingdoms. The night sky was their manuscript, and every star was a character in the story of the world. In these tablets of clay, the knowledge of the heavens was preserved to guide future generations long after those ancient kingdoms had crumbled to dust. For the people of Mesopotamia, watching the sky was not just an act of curiosity, but of communion with the divine. The shimmering heavens were like a sacred text. If read correctly, one might glean the god's will, or a hint of the future. When a king lay sleepless with worry, he would turn to the night sky and the wisdom of his astrologers to find reassurance or warning. The priests who climbed the ziggurats each night carried the weight of their civilization's hopes as they scanned for signs. A faint new star, a halo around the moon, the erratic path of a comet. They believed that by paying attention and performing the correct rituals, they could appease the gods and perhaps even alter fate. Under the Mesopotamian sky, humanity's earliest astronomers felt both humbled and empowered. Small beneath the infinite dome of stars, yet entrusted with the keys to understanding a grand celestial script. While the peoples of Mesopotamia were charting the heavens in their way, along another great river far to the west, a different civilization also looked skyward. In the land of the Nile, the ancient Egyptians watched the stars from temple courtyards and from the decks of riverboats drifting under the night sky. Though their world was one of desert and river, of pyramids and sphinxes, they too felt the pull of the cosmos. The same stars that shone over Babylon also glittered above the Nile, and the Egyptians, like their eastern counterparts, found divine stories twined among the constellations. Imagine the darkness over ancient Egypt, broken only by the silver ribbon of the Nile reflecting 1,000 stars. The outline of distant pyramids and temple pylons stands dark against the starry vault. In the stillness, one might hear the gentle lap of water and a night bird's call. Egyptian priests stand atop their temple roofs or high on their pyramids, studying the night sky as a warm breeze stirs the palm fronds below. Torches flicker in their hands, but their eyes are turned upward. For them, the sky was the realm of the gods as much as the earth was, and one goddess in particular spanned the heavens. Nut, the lady of the sky, whose body arched above the world, adorned with stars. In Egyptian myth, the sky itself was a goddess. They envisioned Nut as a majestic figure, her skin dark blue and sprinkled with stars, stretched from horizon to horizon. Every evening, as the sun god Ra grew old and weary, Nut would swallow him, and darkness would fall. All night, the sun travelled through the unseen world in her belly, and by dawn, Nut would give birth to the sun anew, restoring light to the world. And so each day was an eternal cycle of death and rebirth played out in the heavens. The stars, scattered across Nut's body, were said to be her children, or perhaps lamps lit by the souls of the departed as they sailed with Ra through the night. The Egyptians felt the sky was alive and compassionate, a protective canopy under which life flourished. In their tombs, they painted the image of Nut across ceilings and coffins, ensuring that in death, as in life, they would rest beneath the comforting arch of her starry form. To the people of the Nile, one star held particular significance, heralding a miracle each year. This was Sirius, the dog star, the brightest star in the sky. For weeks it would vanish, lost in the sun's glare, and the nights would pass without its blue-white sparkle. But in midsummer, just before dawn, Sirius would reappear on the eastern horizon with a flash of light. The Egyptians watched for that first dawn rising of Sirius with great anticipation, for it announced the coming inundation of the Nile. Sure enough, days after Sirius's return, the river would begin to swell with life-giving waters, flooding the fields and depositing rich new soil. The day of Sirius's first appearance marked the Egyptian New Year, a moment of celebration and hope. Across the realm, priests would announce the sighting and ceremonies would commence, thanking the gods for the promise of returning waters. The Egyptians personified Sirius as the goddess Sopdet, whom the Greeks later called Sothis. Over time, she became linked to their great goddess Isis, divine mother, wife, and healer. They imagined Isis in sorrow during the time Sirius disappeared, weeping for her lost husband Osiris. When Sirius returned to the pre-dawn sky, they saw it as Isis emerging joyfully, heralding the rebirth of Osiris and the renewal of the land. One poetic legend claimed that the Nile's floodwaters were actually the tears of Isis. She wept all through the months that her husband Osiris was gone from the sky, and only when he returned did her tears lessen, bringing an end to the inundation. Thus, the cosmic drama of life, death, and rebirth was played out each year in the heavens. The rise of that single star was a celebration, a celestial festival when temples rang out with prayers of thanks as the Nile rose. It was as if a heavenly hand reached down through that star to touch the river and make it flow once more. High above, another familiar constellation glittered, the same Orion that Mesopotamians saw as Gilgamesh. To the Egyptians, those stars had a different story to tell. They saw not a mortal hero, but the figure of Osiris, their god of the afterlife and resurrection. Orion's 3 bright belt stars were imagined as a crown upon Osiris's head, and the star Sirius was his loyal wife, Isis, following him through the sky. Night after night, Orion strides across the sky, and the Egyptians believed this was Osiris, ruling in the heavens as he once did on earth. Just behind Orion follows the brilliant Sirius star, Isis, never far from her beloved husband in the celestial realm. The Egyptian legend of Osiris was one of tragedy and rebirth. Osiris, once a wise king on earth, was betrayed by his jealous brother Set, who sealed him in a coffin and cast him into the Nile. Isis, Osiris's devoted wife, searched tirelessly and found his body, but Set stole it away and tore it into pieces, scattering them across the land. Yet even this was not the end. Grieving but determined, Isis journeyed the length of Egypt to retrieve the fragments of Osiris. With the help of the jackal-headed god Anubis, she reassembled her husband and breathed the breath of life back into him through magic and love. Having fulfilled his destiny, Osiris lived again, briefly, and in that moment Isis conceived a son, the falcon god Horus. Osiris then departed the earthly realm to rule over the land of the dead, welcomed as a just and eternal king of the afterlife. It was then, the Egyptians believed, that Osiris took his place among the stars. To them, the constellation Orion was Osiris's glowing form in the heavens, a sign that though he had died, he would live forever as a guiding light above. In the sky, the Egyptians noted that Orion, like Sirius, vanished from the night sky for a season each year. To them, this was Osiris journeying in the underworld. After an absence of about 70 nights, Orion would return to the sky before dawn. Osiris reborn. This span curiously matched the 70 days of embalming in their funerary rites, a sacred timing that prepared a soul for rebirth. Thus, the movements of those stars mirrored the myth, the death, mourning, and triumphant return of Osiris, renewing faith that life would prevail over death. Egyptian kings, the pharaohs, saw their own destinies among those stars. They built mighty pyramids as tombs to ensure their journey to the afterlife. Within the Great Pyramid of Giza, narrow shafts were aligned with precision toward the heavens. One shaft points directly to the belt of Orion. It was no accident. This was a channel for the pharaoh's soul to ascend and join Osiris among the stars. We can imagine on the night of a king's burial, priests watching from the dark interior as Orion's stars glimmered through that passage, a cosmic guide for the departed ruler. Another shaft aimed northward at the ever-circling stars near the pole, where his soul would ascend to the celestial realm of the indestructible, undying stars that never set, a perfect destination for a king's soul. The Egyptians, too, mapped the sky in their own way. On the ceilings of tombs and temples, they painted star charts, clusters of stars, and figures of gods sailing in boats across the heavens. They identified certain star groups called decans that would rise consecutively as the night wore on. By noting which decan star was rising, priests could tell the time of night, essentially using the stars as a clock. A procession of 36 decan stars marked the hours through the darkness until dawn. It is humbling to think of a civilization so ancient measuring time with the glitter of distant suns. Even now, in tombs uncovered by archaeologists, the star-painted ceilings endure, the decans and constellations still visible, a timeless celestial clock that guided those souls. To lie in an Egyptian tomb beneath a painted ceiling of stars was to be literally surrounded by the heavens, as if sleeping beneath the open night sky forever. Many of the constellations we recognize today took on different guises in the minds of Egyptian stargazers. What some cultures saw as a bear, the Egyptians envisioned as part of a bull, the foreleg of a bull, to be precise. Night after night, this celestial bull's leg rotated around the North Star like the hand of a cosmic clock. In their mythology, this was the leg of the bull that had carried the god Osiris, later placed in the sky as a reminder. Other stars formed the outline of a divine river in the sky, a mirror to the Nile below. The Milky Way itself was sometimes imagined as the heavenly Nile, a broad, glowing stream on which the solar bark of Ra sailed during the night. They believed the sun god Ra navigated this celestial river in his boat during the hours of darkness, just as the pharaoh might sail the earthly Nile by day. As dawn approached, Ra would emerge from the eastern horizon once more, victorious over night. For the people of the Nile, the night sky was far from an empty darkness. It was a kingdom of everlasting life, a place where worthy souls could shine forever. To them, the stars were comforting beacons, the lights of an afterlife where the spirit of a pharaoh might sail among the imperishable stars, or a loved one might become a new star shining down. Looking up each night, the Egyptians felt a profound reassurance that death was not an end, but a journey. The heavens promised renewal and eternity, with each constellation and star a reminder that the cosmic order was benevolent and enduring. So under every sky, whether above a Mesopotamian ziggurat or an Egyptian temple, human beings found connection and guidance in the stars. These ancient civilizations along the Euphrates and the Nile left an enduring legacy in the stars, but they were far from alone. All across the world, our ancestors looked up at the night sky and wove stories from its patterns. Under tropical skies and polar skies, on every continent, people found meaning in the glittering darkness above. Separated by vast oceans and mountains, without ever knowing of one another, they nevertheless shared in this great human tradition of starlit tales. It seems that wherever people went, they carried an innate wonder for the cosmos, a sense that those distant lights were alive with spirits, animals, heroes, and guides watching over the earth. It is remarkable how often different cultures, isolated by geography, ended up seeing similar shapes in the starry canvas. Take the group of 7 bright stars that many today call the Big Dipper or the Plough. In ancient Mesopotamia, this pattern might have been seen as a wagon or chariot. Across the ocean, many Native American peoples also gazed at those stars and imagined a great bear lumbering across the sky, pursued by hunters. The ancient Greeks, too, would come to see a bear there, Ursa Major, the Great Bear. Perhaps the sight of those stars suggested the roundness and strength of a bear to the human mind, wherever it roamed. Such coincidences hint at a universal imagination, as if the stars speak a language that all humans can hear in their own way. Consider the Pleiades, a tiny cluster of stars that has captivated imaginations everywhere. In Greece, they were the 7 sisters pursued by Orion. In India, they were seen as 7 celestial mothers. And to some Pacific Islanders, they were a flock of birds flying together. Nearly every culture noticed those 7 bright specks and spun a tale about them. Perhaps it is no coincidence that the number 7 is sacred in so many traditions. 7 stars shining in unison were a source of wonder that echoed down through folklore across the world. Far to the east, beneath the same sky, the ancient Chinese developed their own rich celestial lore, mapping a tapestry of hundreds of constellations. To them, the night sky was a vast kingdom, mirrored after their earthly empire. At its centre, they saw the North Star, steadfast and still. This was the celestial emperor, seated on his heavenly throne. Clustered around him were the constellations of the purple forbidden enclosure. Courtiers and guardians circling the throne, just as officials might surround the emperor in a royal palace. Meanwhile, spanning the sky was a great river of light, the Milky Way, which they called the Silver River. The Chinese imagination populated the heavens with symbols reflecting their world, from imperial courts to legendary beasts, all shining above. They even divided the sky into 4 great celestial palaces, each watched over by a mythical creature. In the east ruled the azure dragon, with its multitude of stars forming the spring constellations. In the west, the white tiger prowled where autumn stars set, guarding that quarter of the heavens. To the south glowed the vermilion bird, or phoenix, embodying the warmth of summer skies. And in the north loomed the black tortoise, entwined with a serpent, presiding over the cold winter nights. These celestial beasts marked the seasons and cardinal directions, a cosmic menagerie spread out above to mirror the natural cycle below. On summer nights in China, when the Milky Way gleams overhead, people told the tale of Jinu and Niu Lang, the weaver girl and the cowherd. Jinu was said to be a celestial maiden, a weaver of divine silk, symbolized by the star Vega. Niulang was a humble cowherd on Earth, represented by the star Altair. The two fell deeply in love, but their union was forbidden by the Queen of Heaven. As punishment, they were separated across the silver river of stars, one on each side of the Milky Way, forever longing for each other. Yet, kindness prevailed in a way. Once each year, on the 7th night of the 7th lunar month, a bridge of magpies is said to form across the stars, allowing the lovers to meet for that single precious night. On that night, people on Earth say the skies are especially quiet, as all the magpies have flown up to form the bridge. If rain falls, it is called the tears of the weaver girl and cowherd, shedding sorrow or joy during their brief reunion. But as dawn approaches, the bridge of birds disperses, and the two must part again. Vega and Altair drift back to their lonely sides of the Milky Way, 2 points of light separated by the river of stars, an eternal reminder of love and longing sparkling in the summer sky. In the Indian subcontinent, sages and storytellers also found their heroes in the firmament. The 7 stars of the Big Dipper were known as the Saptarishi, 7 great sages or rishis of ancient times. Night after night, these 7 wise ones circle the pole star, Dhruva, keeping a timeless vigil over the world. Indian myth holds that these eternal sages reside in the sky to watch over humanity and preserve knowledge. And the steady pole star itself, Dhruva, was seen as a devoted child blessed with immortality, a boy from legend who, through unwavering faith, earned his place among the stars as the one fixed point in the sky. This pole star, Dhruva Tara, became a beacon of consistency in a turning world, a spiritual and literal anchor overhead. To anyone looking up on a clear night in those lands, the sight of the 7 rishis and the faithful pole star would have been a comfort, cosmic reassurance that wisdom and stability guide the heavens. Beneath the tropical skies of ancient Central America, the Maya civilization also looked to the heavens for guidance. From the top of stepped pyramids rising above the rainforest, Maya priests observed the stars and planets with meticulous care. They noted the solstices and equinoxes, aligning their grand temples so that on certain days sunlight would pierce inner chambers or cast serpentine shadows down staircases. The planet Venus held special significance, appearing as the morning star and the evening star in turn. The Maya tracked Venus's cycle so precisely that their calculations rival even modern accuracy. To them, Venus was a potent deity, a celestial herald whose rising could mark times for important ceremonies and decisions. When Venus first glinted at dawn after days of absence, it was a signal that echoed through their culture, a spark in the sky that guided their calendar and rituals. Even their mythology reflected this reverence. They spoke of twin hero brothers who ascended to become the Sun and Venus, forever pursuing each other across the sky. In the silent darkness before dawn, a Maya priest, gazing at brilliant Venus, would have felt a deep connection to the cosmic order, an assurance that the gods were watching, and that time itself was woven with the movements of celestial lights. In the stories of many Native American tribes, the Milky Way itself was a path of souls, a route that the spirits of the departed travel on their way to the afterlife. On a dark night, when the Milky Way arcs overhead like a luminescent ribbon, one can almost feel the presence of those countless souls journeying along it. The Cherokee speak of it as a road of light left by a giant dog that stole cornmeal and fled to the sky, spilling the meal behind. Other tribes simply call it the spirit road. Each shimmering star along that band could be a campfire lit by ancestors to guide those who come after. Looking up, the living take comfort that their loved ones have a bright road to walk, and that they too will join that starry trail in time. In the southern hemisphere, under skies unfamiliar to the north, the Aboriginal peoples of Australia looked not at the stars themselves, but at the darkness between them. In those vast dark patches and starry outlines, they traced the form of a great celestial emu. Its long neck and body stretched across the sky, head formed by a coal-black nebula against the bright star clouds of the Milky Way. According to some Aboriginal traditions, this was a cosmic emu that had a role in their Dreamtime creation stories. When the emu's outline appears most clearly in the sky during autumn evenings, it signals the season when real emu eggs can be found in nests on Earth. Aboriginal elders would point to the sky emu to let their communities know when it was time to search for those eggs, a vital food source. In this way, their sky lore was intimately tied to the land and its cycles. And far out in the Pacific Ocean, Polynesian navigators read the stars like a map. In a world of open sea and scattered islands, they had no compasses or written charts, only the cosmos above to guide their way. On a double-hulled canoe, rocking gently on warm midnight waves, a navigator lies on his back, eyes on the heavens. The ocean around him is dark, but for the glow of starlight dancing on the water's surface, and the occasional spark of bioluminescent plankton in the wake. He watches intently the rising and setting of the stars. Each star that rose from the horizon indicated a specific direction, a path over the ocean leading toward a distant island known only by its star. They memorized star paths, knowing which bright star would ascend where on the horizon at different seasons. In their minds, they carried a star compass, a mental chart of the night sky divided into houses of rising and setting points. By following this celestial compass and feeling the subtle cues of wind and wave, Polynesians sailed across vast distances with astonishing accuracy. For instance, navigators setting out from Tahiti toward Hawaii would keep a certain guiding star low on the horizon before dawn each day, ensuring they stayed on the path northward to their unseen destination. Each night, the stars rotated, but a skilled wayfinder knew exactly which new star to follow as the target star set, maintaining the course across an empty ocean. So under every sky, wherever human beings found themselves, whether on a desert dune, a mountain plateau, or a mid-ocean canoe, they saw a map of meaning above. These myriad stories of love and adventure, gods and beasts, birth and death, all unfolding overhead, gave our ancestors a sense of belonging to something greater. The night wasn't an empty darkness. It was a living tapestry, threaded with meaning, where the boundary between earth and heaven grew thin. In sharing our ancestors' starry tales, we see how alike we all are in our wonder. Generations across time and cultures all looked up at the same sky and felt similar hopes and mysteries stirring in their hearts. Over time, as travel and trade linked these far-flung peoples, their sky lore began to mingle. Ideas and stories travelled along caravan routes with merchants, across the seas with sailors, and in the minds of scholars journeying to foreign courts. The constellations named in one land were recognized and renamed in another. The bright star of Ishtar in Babylon became Aphrodite's star in Greece, and later Venus for the Romans. Always the same heavenly body, transformed by each culture's imagination. The great bull of heaven that Gilgamesh fought would later charge across the Greek sky as Zeus's majestic white bull. And the patterns charted by Mesopotamian astronomers found new life as the Greeks adopted them, weaving their own legends through the ancient star maps. In ancient Greece, a land of poets and philosophers, twilight would often find people turning their gaze skyward with wonder. Imagine a Greek shepherd resting on a hillside as the day's heat fades, pointing out patterns in the sky to his son. There, he says, is the great hunter Orion, chasing the 7 sisters of the Pleiades. Over there is brave Perseus, eternally rescuing Princess Andromeda from a sea monster. The old star lore blossomed in Greece into a rich new tapestry of myth, woven with familiar characters and adventures. Greek sky watchers learned from the Babylonian records and Egyptian wisdom, yet they saw something of their own in the stars. Where earlier cultures saw mostly gods and beasts, the Greeks also saw their legendary heroes and tragic figures shining above. Perseus, slayer of monsters. Andromeda, the princess chained to a rock. Orion, the great hunter striding in pursuit of the Pleiades. All these tales found their way into the night sky. Each twinkling light became a character in an epic drama spanning the heavens. It was as if the familiar stories told by Homer and Hesiod gained immortal form, etched forever in patterns of stars, so that no story or hero would ever be forgotten. Yet the Greeks did more than spin new myths. They began to ask what the stars truly were made of and why they moved as they did. In their gentle Mediterranean nights, some curious minds pondered the cosmos with a new kind of wonder, not just in stories, but in search of cosmic order underlying it all. They imagined that the planets and stars might move according to hidden music or mathematics, an elegant harmony orchestrated by a divine mind. Philosophers like Pythagoras suggested the stars were attached to crystalline spheres that rang with ethereal music as they turned, the so-called harmony of the spheres. Though invisible to mortal ears, this celestial music symbolized an orderly universe, a cosmos ruled by beauty and proportion. And so, even as myth and science were entwined, humanity's understanding of the sky was slowly shifting from the purely fantastical to something deeper, foreshadowing the dawn of astronomy to come. For now, however, such ideas remained entwined with myth and philosophy, two sides of the same coin in humanity's quest to decipher the night. Beneath the skies of Greece and later Rome, these ancient star tales would reach new heights and take on new forms. In classical antiquity's clear nights, figures like Zeus, Hera, and Hercules were imagined shining above, their stories connecting with those old constellations passed down from Babylon and Egypt. The Greek storytellers gave the stars familiar names and dramas that we still recall, even as their philosophers pondered cosmic harmonies and the true nature of those distant lights. Myth and inquiry walked hand in hand under the same stars. The journey under this cosmos was far from over. New voices would soon speak, and new legends would be born among the constellations, carrying humanity's wonder forward into the ages. Night after night on the Indian subcontinent, as crickets chirped in the warm breeze, ancient eyes gazed upward in wonder. Without modern lights, the sky was a river of darkness overflowing with stars, each one glinting like a tiny lamp in a temple. Families would finish their evening meals and step outside beneath the velvet sky. Above them sprawled a vast tapestry of sparkling lights. In those distant times, people imagined that each glittering point was not a cold, distant sun, but a living presence, a divine sage, a faithful lover, or perhaps a glimmer of heaven's river flowing above. Under dark sapphire heavens, elders would point out patterns in the stars to wide-eyed children gathered around a small fire. Faces glowed in the firelight as the old ones spoke in soft, reverent tones. The night air was warm and still, and their voices carried wisdom and wonder, weaving tales that tied the listeners' hearts to the stars themselves. One of the most beloved patterns they traced was a curving line of 7 bright stars shining in the northern sky. This, they said, was the Saptarishi, the 7 great sages, immortalized in the firmament. Each star was a wise and ancient rishi, a seer whose wisdom had guided humanity in ages past. By some heavenly grace, these sages had been lifted into the night sky to shine forever as a reminder of their counsel. By some heavenly grace, these sages had been lifted into the night sky to shine forever as a reminder of their counsel. Night after night, through all seasons, they could be found slowly circling around the pole. Where some other cultures saw the shape of a giant bear or a plough in these stars, the people of India perceived the outlines of 7 venerable men keeping vigil in the heavens. It was as if the sky itself had become an eternal ashram, a hermitage of sages who watched over the world below. In these tales, near the 7 sages, a single still point in the heavens commanded awe. It was a lone star that barely twinkles, a modest but steadfast light always fixed in the north. This is Dhruva Tara, the pole star, named for a little prince whose unwavering devotion earned him a place among the stars. As a boy, Dhruva yearned for recognition. He was a young prince who, according to legend, had been slighted and spurned by a cruel stepmother. Feeling hurt and alone, the child sought solace, not in anger, but in prayer. Dhruva retreated into the deep forest to meditate on Lord Vishnu, determined to prove himself worthy of love. So great was his dedication that he stood unmoving through biting cold nights and sweltering days, surviving on air and sheer faith. The animals of the forest watched silently as this small boy held fast, eyes closed in single-minded devotion. Finally, Vishnu, the preserver of the universe, was moved by Dhruva's relentless faith. Appearing in a burst of divine light, Vishnu blessed the boy and granted him a splendid boon. Dhruva would shine in the sky for all eternity, an undying star. Thus the child became Dhruva Tara. From that day on, no matter the season or year, Dhruva's star remained fixed in the heavens. All the other stars, even the 7 sages, slowly wheel about him as if paying homage to the boy who attained immortality through devotion. To people on earth, Dhruva's gentle light came to symbolize steadfastness. As long as his star glowed in the northern sky, one could always find one's way. Travelers and navigators trusted it to guide their journeys, and spiritual seekers took comfort in its story, reminding them that patience and faith can anchor even a lost soul. High overhead, the 7 sages and Dhruva were not alone. Among them lies a faint companion star, only just visible to keen eyes, hovering close beside one of the brighter sage stars. This subtle pinprick of light was known as Arundhati. In life, Arundhati was the devoted wife of the sage Vashistha, and by a special blessing, she too shines in the heavens alongside her husband. It is rare in ancient lore for a wife to be honoured with her own star, but Arundhati's virtue was considered so exceptional that she was immortalized in the sky. Together, Vashistha and Arundhati form a true cosmic couple, a double star, gliding through the galaxy as one. In Indian tradition, they became a symbol of marital fidelity and unity. For generations, newlywed couples have been taken outside on their wedding night to seek out Arundhati's tiny sparkle next to her husband's steady glow. In that ritual moment, the groom shows his bride this stellar pair with reverence. They silently pray for a bond as unbreakable and pure as that between Arundhati and Vashishta. Under the open sky, the two human souls make their vow, while those two ancient souls shine down upon them. The sight of Arundhati's delicate light beside her beloved serves as a gentle reminder that in a good marriage, each partner supports the other, travelling together through life, just as those twin stars journey together through the night. Scanning further across the sky's dome, villagers could find other familiar lights tied to ancient tales. On certain clear nights, towards the west, they might spot a tight cluster of tiny stars, like a sprinkle of fine diamonds on black velvet. This was known as Kritika, a name meaning the cutters, but to many it simply meant the six nurturers. We know these stars today as the Pleiades. In Indian lore, they were 6 radiant sisters. These sisters play a loving role in the saga of Kartikeya, the celestial war god. As the tale goes, when Kartikeya was miraculously born from a divine spark, he emerged not as one infant, but as 6 identical babes, each lying on a lotus petal in a sacred lake. 6 kindly star maidens, the Kritikas, discovered the glowing children and took them into their arms. Each maiden nursed and cared for one of the babies, soothing them with lullabies under the night sky. In time, the goddess Parvati, Kartikeya's mother, gathered the 6 infants into one form, giving Kartikeya 6 heads, so that each foster mother would forever be remembered. In honor of the Kritika sisters' compassion, the gods placed their 6 stars in the heavens for all to see. Kartikeya, also called Skanda or Murugan, grew to be a fearless warrior general of the gods, but he never forgot the gentle mothers who raised him. There is an old saying that once upon a time there were actually 7 Kritika sisters. Some whisper that the 7 were originally married to the 7 great sages of the sky, but one sister was lost or estranged. Different stories give different reasons. Perhaps she strayed from her marriage, falling in love with the dazzling god of fire Agni, and thus was cast away. Or perhaps she alone remained loyal to her husband and refused to leave him for the heavens, and so did not join her siblings in the sky. Whatever the cause, only 6 of the Kritika are clearly seen by most eyes. The 7th hiding her light in shame or sorrow. The people peering up at that little cluster noticed that one star was missing or faint, and they wove this story to explain the gap. In that way, even a tiny darkness among the stars became meaningful. A reminder that every light in the sky, bright or dim, has a story and a lesson to impart. Far off toward the east, another bright star caught the eye of sky gazers. Glowing with a distinct reddish hue, it stood out among the pale stars around it. This was Rohini, meaning the red one, gleaming like a tiny ruby set in the forehead of the constellation of the bull. Indeed, Rohini marks the head of the celestial bull, called Vrishabha in Sanskrit, and some said it was the bull's fiery eye gazing down. In the old stories, Rohini was a beautiful princess, one of the 27 daughters of the creator Daksha. These 27 sisters were given in marriage to Chandra, the moon god, and they became the goddesses of the lunar mansions. As the moon makes his nightly rounds across the sky, He is said to visit each of his wives in turn. One after another, night by night, he spends time with them as he moves through the month. But Chandra, fickle at heart, did not treat all his star wives equally. He found himself enchanted most of all by Rohini's charm and beauty. She was his favourite consort, and he lingered long in her company, shining extra bright when he stayed over her abode. His other wives, the stars who waited for their turns, grew sorrowful and jealous at being neglected. Finally, they went together to their father Daksha and pleaded for justice. Daksha was a stern patriarch, and upon hearing that his son-in-law the moon was slighting his duties, he flew into anger. In his wrath, Daksha pronounced a terrible curse, that Chandra would wither away and die. No sooner had these words been spoken than the moon began to lose his light. Night after night, the brilliant full moon shrank. Chandra fell ill and pale, his round face becoming a thin crescent, then a mere sliver. The world below grew anxious as the nights turned darker. Rohini and her sisters, horrified at what they had done, wept and begged their father to revoke the curse. But Daksha's pronouncement could not be fully undone. At last, seeing his daughters repentant and the moon on the verge of disappearing completely, Daksha relented somewhat. He modified the curse. Chandra would still die, but not once and for all. He would wax and wane in an endless cycle. Thus, the moon would diminish half of the time, each night growing weaker, until on the darkest night he vanished entirely. Then, miraculously, he would be reborn and regain his light, growing fuller and stronger night by night. Some say that it was the great god Shiva who intervened at this point, placing the dying moon upon his own forehead to save him, and decreeing that the moon shall recover after each new moon night. Either way, ever since that ancient drama, the moon's face grows and fades with a celestial rhythm. When the silver orb in the sky thins to a crescent, people remember Daksha's curse and the moon's sorrow. When it swells again to a full moon, they see it as a sign of grace and restoration. And so the tale of Rohini and the moon became a lesson etched in the heavens. Even heavenly beings must learn fairness, and through suffering and forgiveness, balance is restored. As the moon makes its monthly journey, the skies of India also reveal a hazy band arching from horizon to horizon on the clearest nights, a ghostly river of innumerable stars. Our modern science calls it the Milky Way, the view of our galaxy from within. But to those early storytellers, it was the Akash Ganga, the Ganges river of the sky. They imagined this pale, glowing ribbon above as a reflection of India's most sacred river, the earthly Ganges, but flowing in the heavens. One myth says that in ancient times, the gods agreed to send the divine river Ganga down from heaven to earth, to cleanse the ashes of long-departed kings. Yet the river's power was so great that it would have flooded and shattered the world. So the mighty god Shiva caught the descending torrent in his tangled locks, breaking its fall. He let the Ganga out again in gentle streams, which became the sacred river that flows across India. To this day, people speak of the Ganga's water as coming from the hair of Shiva. Perhaps a part of that river remained above, winding among the stars. Whenever they looked up at the Milky Way, Indian poets and sages saw a shimmering pathway connecting heaven and earth. They called it the Sky Ganges and revered it as a source of spiritual energy, just like the real Ganges on the ground. Some said that the souls of the virtuous ascended to heaven along that bright pathway of light. The Akash Ganga thus symbolized a bridge between the mortal realm and the divine. Its soft glow, stretched across the night, reminded everyone that the waters which gave life on earth had their counterpart in the heavens. In the stillness of a clear night, one could lie on their back by the riverbank and see the ghostly white river in the sky, mirroring the flowing river below, and feel a profound sense of unity with the cosmos. Ancient sages did not stop at rivers and people when picturing the night sky. In one Hindu text, the entire starry firmament was envisioned as a single, colossal being swimming through space like a dolphin in an endless cosmic ocean. They described the constellations revolving around the North Star as forming the body of this celestial creature, called Shishumara. The glowing band of the Milky Way became its glistening outline, and the pole star was said to mark the creature's tail. This poetic vision turned the heavens themselves into a living entity. It was as if all the stars were part of a great cosmic animal, playfully diving and swirling in the waters of the night. By using such imagery, the mystics of India expressed the idea that the universe is alive and interconnected, a single grand organism in which every star and every soul has its place. Under such a sky, the people of ancient India did not feel alone or lost. They felt watched over by a multitude of gentle lights, each carrying a piece of human truth. The 7 sages twinkled, as if imparting wisdom across the ages. The steady pole star assured travellers of a constant north, even as it symbolized Dharma, the steadfast order that guides one through life's uncertainties. The loving fidelity of Arundhati's star reassured couples about the power of devotion. The cluster of the Kritika sisters showed that even the faintest stars held a story of kindness and care. The moon's waxing and waning became a nightly lesson in humility and restoration, as Chandra learned to share his light among all his wives. Even the sudden terror of an eclipse found a place in their cosmic tapestry. They said that a serpentine demon, Rahu, occasionally crept up and swallowed the sun or moon, causing darkness in the midst of day or a starless night. In those moments, people would rush to bathe in rivers and chant prayers, believing their devotion helped the luminary break free from Rahu's grasp. And when the sun's light or the moon's glow returned, it was a triumph of divine order over chaos once again. And the Milky Way's pale glow, Akash Ganga, arched overhead as a silent reminder that the earthly and the heavenly are intertwined, that life-giving waters flow both on earth and in the starry firmament. Through these celestial myths, the Indians saw their own hopes, virtues, and struggles mirrored above. To them, the night was a grand tapestry where morality and meaning were woven into the very fabric of the cosmos. As our view shifts and we travel farther east across the map, the constellations slowly change, but the sense of wonder remains the same. Under the same sky, different peoples imagined different stories. In the lands of ancient China, for example, on summer nights when the Milky Way is at its brightest, they told of a weaver girl and a cowherd whose love spanned the stars. Our journey continues with their story, a tale of love and longing written in the heavens. A warm summer night settles over the Chinese countryside. It is the 7th night of the 7th lunar month, a date eagerly awaited by young and old. In the darkness, countless stars glitter like dew on black silk. A broad ribbon of pale light streams overhead. The Milky Way, known here as the Silver River or the Heavenly River. Families gather outdoors, gazing up at the sky's most enchanting sight. On opposite sides of that glowing starry river shine 2 particular stars, each bright and unmistakable. To the west of the Milky Way is Vega, the Weaver Girl star. High to the east is Altair, the Cowherd star. All year long they face one another from afar, separated by the luminous river of stars between. This night, their story is on everyone's lips. Under the gentle sky, grandparents recount the ancient tale of why those stars are apart and how, on this very night, each year, they come together. This love story is so ancient that it appears in the oldest known poems of China. Over 2,600 years ago, an old verse in the classic of poetry described the scene. In the heavens, there is the river of stars, shining and glimmering. The weaving maiden works all day, yet her loom remains empty. The cowherd stands desolate, unable to cross the river to see her. Even in those early days, the Chinese sang of the weaving lady and her ox-herding lover, separated by the Milky Way's silver stream. The legend begins in the heavens. High above, beyond the clouds, lived the Jade Emperor's youngest daughter, a beautiful maiden named Xinu, the Weaver Girl. Day after day, Xinu sat by her celestial loom, weaving soft clouds and rainbow tapestries to drape the sky. Her delicate hands flew like birds as she crafted sunsets and sunrises of dazzling hues. But despite the splendor of her work, Xinu felt lonely. In all of heaven, she had no companion of her own age, no one to love. Her eyes would drift from her loom to gaze down toward the world of mortals, wondering what life was like beyond the palace of heaven. Down on earth, there lived a young man named Niulang. He was a humble cowherd who had lost his parents and had little in the world except an old ox and a kind heart. Niulang spent his days in the fields, guiding his small herd of cattle along the riverbanks and green pastures. Though poor and often lonely, he was gentle and hard-working. He would sing to himself under the daytime sky and sleep under the open stars at night. His only friend was the aged ox that he cared for, a creature far wiser than it appeared. Unknown to Niulang, this was no ordinary animal. In some versions of the tale, the ox was a heavenly being who had been cast down to earth. Because Niulang showed it great kindness, the grateful ox decided to help him find happiness. One summer day, the old ox suddenly spoke to Niulang in a human voice. It told the astonished cowherd that later that day, magical maidens from heaven would descend to a hidden lake nearby to bathe. It advised Niulang to go to the lake and he would meet his destiny. Trusting his faithful ox, Niulang followed its guidance. He walked to the secluded spot the ox described, a clear pool sheltered by willows and wildflowers, sparkling under the afternoon sun. Not long after, Niulang heard laughter like wind chimes. Peeking from behind the reeds, he could scarcely believe his eyes. A group of ethereal young women, radiant and graceful, were floating down from the sky. These were 7 fairy sisters, daughters of the heavens, come to enjoy a brief respite on earth. Their robes of silk shimmered with celestial light, and as they alighted, the very lotus buds on the lake began to bloom. Upon arrival, the sisters shed their silken robes and slipped into the cool water, their laughter ringing as they played among the lily pads. Among the maidens, Niulang's eyes were drawn to the youngest, Xinu, who was by far the loveliest. As she splashed and swam, her laughter sent a thrill to Niulang's heart. He knew at once that he had never seen anyone so enchanting, and an ache of longing blossomed in him. Reminding himself of the ox's words, Niulang decided to act. While the maidens were distracted, he quietly crept out and gathered up Jinu's celestial robe lying on the grass, the magic silken garment that allowed her to return to the sky. Then he waited. When the time came for the sisters to depart, 6 of them rose from the water, donned their robes, and ascended back toward heaven in shimmering streaks of light. But Jinu could not find her robe where she had left it. Panicked and suddenly alone, she searched the bushes, to no avail. At that moment, Niulang stepped forward from his hiding place, holding the delicate silken gown. With gentle respect, he approached the frightened weaver maiden. Niulang confessed that he had been watching, and that he meant no harm, but had taken her robe because he desperately wished to speak with her. Blushing and hesitant, Jinu wrapped herself in Niulang's cloak instead, and listened as this mortal man poured out his heart. As Niulang spoke with earnest sincerity, Jinu's fear melted away. She saw the honesty in his eyes, and found herself moved by his kindness and courage. Here was a man willing to risk everything just to meet her. In that quiet lakeside moment, something blossomed between them, an understanding, a spark of love that bridged the divide between heaven and earth. Niulang returned Jinu's robe to her, rather than force her to stay. Yet Jinu did not immediately fly back to the sky. The mortal world, with its simple joys and this gentle cowherd, charmed her heart. In time, Jinu chose to remain on Earth and become Niulang's wife. Never had Niulang been so happy. He brought Jinu home to his little farm, and together they made a humble life. Their love was true and deep. Each morning they worked side by side, Niulang ploughing the fields with the help of his faithful ox, and Jinu weaving cloth and tending a small garden. In the evenings, they would sit beneath the whispering trees, watching the fireflies blink under the endless sky. They were content in each other's company, often exchanging stories. Jinu pointing out the constellations she knew from her celestial home, and Niulang teaching her the simple folk songs of the valley. Their gentle voices mingled with the distant hoot of an owl and the soft chirping of crickets. Before long, they were blessed with 2 children, a boy and a girl, who filled their cottage with laughter. Niulang and Jinu lived in peaceful bliss, thankful for every day they shared. But paradise on earth was not to last forever. Up in the celestial realms, the Jade Emperor and his court eventually discovered that the Weaver Girl had abandoned her heavenly duties. Jinu's loom had fallen silent. No new clouds or brocades had been woven since she left. When the heavenly queen, some say it was the Jade Emperor's own wife, learned that Jinu had married a mortal and was living happily on earth, she was furious at this breach of heavenly law. Without warning, she descended from the sky in a rage and arrived at Niulang's home. In a whirlwind of power, the celestial empress seized Jinu by the wrist. The 2 children clung to their mother, wailing, as a sudden gale howled through the yard. Jinu, tears streaming, was pulled upward into the heavens by force. The last Niulang saw was his beloved reaching out to him, calling his name as the clouds closed around her. Then she was gone. Niulang's world collapsed into grief. His wife had vanished to the sky, and he was left alone with their sobbing children. Then he remembered the faithful old ox, the magical animal that had brought them together. To his shock and sorrow, Niulang found the ox lying down for the last time, its eyes full of understanding. The ox spoke one final time, telling Niulang that if he tanned its hide and wore it across his shoulders, he would gain the power to ascend to heaven. With a heavy heart, Niulang did as his dear ox instructed, giving the creature a gentle farewell and a burial with tears of gratitude. Draping the ox's enchanted hide over himself, and placing his little son and daughter into 2 baskets suspended from a carrying pole, Niulang began to rise into the air. Determined and brimming with desperation, the loving father and husband flew up into the sky, chasing the faint glow of his wife. Niulang's figure streaked upward into the heavens. He could see Jinu and the formidable heavenly queen not far ahead. For a moment, it seemed he might reach them. Jinu turned, and her face lit up with hope on seeing her husband and children rising toward her. But the heavenly queen would not allow it. In her wrath, she pulled a hairpin from her hair, and with a fierce sweep of her arm, scratched a broad line across the sky. Instantly, an immense river of stars materialized. It was the very Milky Way itself, surging between Niulang and Jinu as an impassable barrier. Niulang could go no further. On one side of the blazing star river, Niulang hovered with their 2 weeping children. On the other side stood Jinu, held back by the queen. They reached out their arms but could not touch. Their cries echoed across the newly formed heavenly river. Jinu and Niulang's hearts were shattered. They had come so close, only to be separated by the sparkling torrent of stars. The heavenly queen swept Jinu back to the celestial palace, forbidding her to ever see the cowherd again. Niulang, stranded in the sky with his 2 children, wept and called Jinu's name into the vast emptiness. His tears of despair fell as shooting stars. Taking pity on them, the birds of the earth convene an extraordinary gathering. On that fated night each year, tens of thousands of magpies rise into the sky from every corner of the land. They swirl upward in a great fluttering cloud, black and white wings beating against the starlight. Together, the birds form a living bridge across the breadth of the Milky Way, their bodies arching like a dark, moving ribbon over the shining river of stars. On the 7th night of the 7th lunar month, this span of wings allows Niulang and Jinu to walk across and embrace for a single precious day. All of nature, it is said, rejoices on that day. The sky is clear of storms, the stars shine extra bright, and the 2 lovers, even if only briefly, are together again. And so, on that night each year, when late summer brings the 7th night of the 7th moon, people look up to the heavens and remember Niulang and Jinu. They call it Qixi in China, the Night of Sevens, a time to celebrate love and the hope of reunion against all odds. For centuries, young women would gaze at the Vega star and pray for wisdom and skill in weaving, and for a romance as steadfast as the cowherd and weaver girls. Poets have written countless verses about their celestial love. Even in neighbouring lands like Japan and Korea, the tale lives on as Tanabata or Chilseok, celebrated in colourful festivals under the summer stars. To this day, when the Milky Way is visible on a clear August evening, couples stroll outside and tell the story of the 2 bright stars that meet across the sky. Some say that if it rains on Qixi night, it is the tears of Niulang and Jinu, either tears of joy at reuniting or tears of sorrow at having to part once more. Yet their love endures, shimmering eternally in the night. The weaver girl and the cowherd remain shining symbols of devotion, reminding all who gaze upward that love can conquer distance and time, if only in the heavens. The story of the weaver girl and the cowherd leaves a gentle sigh in the summer air. But the night sky holds countless tales, not all so tender. In other legends, the heavens could darken with menace and mystery. Just as love was written in the stars, so were warnings. Our journey next turns to those tales of dragons in the sky and strange omens that once made emperors tremble. Not every spectacle in the night sky inspired wonder or romance. Some filled our ancestors with fear. When the heavens took an unexpected turn, a sudden darkening of the sun, a blood-red stain on the moon, or a fiery streak across the stars, people believed they were witnessing messages or warnings from above. In those moments, the sky became a theatre of ominous portent, and the stories born from those events are rife with dragons, demons, and forebodings of great change. Imagine a bright morning in an ancient kingdom, the sun climbing high as villagers tend to their fields. Suddenly, a strange twilight falls. The sunlight dulls, and an eerie semi-darkness creeps over the land as if dusk arrived hours too soon. Birds stop chirping mid-song. Confused roosters may even crow, fooled into thinking night has come. People lift their heads to the sky and see an unsettling sight. The sun is disappearing, being eaten away, bite by a black shadow. Panic murmurs ripple through the fields. In the capital, court astronomers in flowing robes rush to their observing instruments with dread, for they know what this means. The Empire's chronicles have warned of such an event, a solar eclipse. But to the common folk, and even to the Emperor himself, a more vivid explanation takes hold. A celestial dragon is devouring the sun. In ancient China, this was the traditional belief. An invisible dragon or monster had attacked the sun. The response was urgent and loud. As the sky grew uncanny dark, people banged on pots and drums, clanged gongs, and set off firecrackers in later eras, all in an effort to scare the dragon away. Villagers yelled and beat anything that could make noise, their clamour rising up to the heavens. At the emperor's palace, officials led ritual chants and the firing of arrows into the sky to drive off the beast. Dogs barked from the commotion, and children clung to their mothers. It was a moment of collective hope and terror, as the entire kingdom attempted to save the sun. One of the oldest eclipse legends comes from China's ancient past, nearly 4,000 years ago. The story goes that two royal astronomers, sometimes named Shi and Ho, failed in their duties to predict an eclipse. They had grown complacent, or some say they were drunk, and they did not warn the emperor that the dragon would attack the sun. When the dark shadow gobbled up the sun without warning, the court was thrown into panic. It is said the emperor's attendants scrambled to light lanterns at midday as birds of night began to chirp. Everyone trembled, believing a dreadful omen was upon them. The emperor was furious, for such negligence could anger the heavens and endanger the realm. As the tale is told, Shi and Ho paid for this lapse with their heads. Ever since, imperial astronomers approached their craft with utmost seriousness, knowing that an eclipse was not merely an astronomical event, but a matter of state security and divine judgment. Eclipses were not the only celestial phenomena to inspire dread. A sudden new star blazing in the night, or a comet with a trailing tail, could also send shivers through a kingdom. The Chinese called comets broom stars, hui xing, as their long tails resembled brooms sweeping the sky. These sweeping stars were thought to brush away the old order and herald great change, often for the worse. When a comet appeared, it might presage the death of an emperor or the fall of a dynasty. Imperial astrologers would dutifully record its appearance, colour, and direction, then scramble to interpret what heavenly message it carried. Chinese history books are filled with such entries. In the spring of the 14th year of the Qian reign, a broom star appeared in the east for 7 nights. The court analysts would note widespread floods or political unrest that followed, linking them to the ill-timed star. Emperors often took these signs seriously. Some would fast and atone for their mistakes when a comet or eclipse occurred, hoping to appease the heavens. Others might preemptively issue pardons or reforms to show humility to the cosmic powers. This impulse to read the skies was not unique to China. Across the world, many cultures developed their own celestial warnings. In Norse mythology, people believed that giant wolves were forever chasing the sun and moon. An eclipse meant one of the wolves had almost caught its prey, and the end of the world, Ragnarok, might be looming. Like the Chinese, the Norse would create a clamour, shouting and banging on objects, trying to scare the wolf away and save the sun. Similarly, in medieval Europe, comets were dreaded as omens of calamity. One famous example is Halley's Comet in 1066. English observers described it as a hairy star, and shortly after, King Harold met defeat at the Battle of Hastings. Many believed the blazing comet foretold the fall of their king. In Mesoamerica, the Aztecs believed a solar eclipse meant a giant jaguar was devouring the sun, a cosmic predator not unlike the Chinese dragon or Norse wolf. They too would raise a great cry and offer sacrifices to help the sun escape. Truly, from Asia to Europe to the Americas, an unexpected eclipse or a blazing comet could strike awe and fear into any community, rich or poor. Yet, not every celestial dragon was feared. In Chinese astronomy, the dragon could also be a noble symbol. The sky was divided into 4 great quadrants, each guarded by a mythical guardian creature: a dragon in the east, a white tiger in the west, a vermilion bird, phoenix, in the south, and a black tortoise snake in the north. The eastern quadrant of the heavens was symbolized by the azure dragon, its sinuous form imagined by linking stars into a long serpentine pattern. This dragon of the east was associated with springtime and rains, a benevolent creature bringing renewal. Chinese star maps depict its body curling across numerous constellations, a cosmic dragon eternally watching over the eastern sky. To the ancient Chinese, dragons were complex creatures. In one tale, they threaten to devour the sun. In another, they bring life-giving rain and stand guard over sections of the firmament. Through these many tales of celestial dragons and omens, we glimpse how profoundly the sky was linked to earthly life. For our ancestors, the heavens were a vast canvas on which the fates of kings and the fortunes of harvests could be written in starlight. Every eclipse, every comet, every strange new star was interpreted with care and concern. Would the dragon bring disaster, or would it pass by quietly? Was the comet a curse, or a call for the ruler to repent? In these stories, we see humanity's early attempt to find meaning in the unpredictable movements of the cosmos. And yet, even as people trembled at eclipses and celebrated cosmic love stories, their eyes kept searching the skies. In the next part of our journey, we will encounter more of those timeless starlit tales from other corners of the world that have guided and inspired generations under the same endless sky. As twilight deepens into night, our journey under ancient skies continues without pause. The cosmos above, shimmering with countless stars, has always spoken to humanity in stories. Our ancestors looked up and saw more than distant suns. They saw memories, myths, and guides lighting the darkness. Each pinpoint of light held meaning. Each pattern in the sky carried a tale. From every corner of the world, People gazing at the same heavens wove their lives and dreams into constellations. And so we continue our exploration of these starlit tales, easing further into the mystery of what our ancestors saw in the cosmos. High above, patterns of stars form shapes that became actors in humanity's first stories. One of the oldest tales ever told is said to be a great hunt that plays out across the heavens. On crisp, clear nights, many cultures saw the same cosmic drama, a mighty creature pursued by hunters through the stars. The outline of the Big Dipper, for instance, was more than just a ladle of lights. It became an animal fleeing across the sky, while nearby stars chased after it in eternal pursuit. Imagine a cool autumn night in a northern forest long ago. The air is crisp, and the scent of pine mingles with campfire smoke. A circle of children huddle close to a flickering fire, their faces bathed in its warm glow, eyes turned upward. An elder sits among them and slowly raises his hand to the heavens. He traces the outline of 7 bright stars overhead. To our eyes, they form the Big Dipper. But to the elder and his people, those stars tell the story of a great bear running across the sky. "See the 4 stars of the Dipper's bowl," he says. That is the bear's sturdy body, and the 3 stars trailing behind, those are hunters giving chase. In the elder's tale, the hunters have been chasing this great bear across the sky since spring. Night after night, as the seasons turn, the bear runs and the hunters follow. All summer long, the pursuit continues under the sparkling heavens. The elder's voice is low and steady as he describes how, at last, as autumn arrives, the bear grows tired. When the stars of the Dipper begin to sink low on the horizon, he says it means the hunters have finally caught up. They strike the bear at last. Its blood drips down from the sky, falling on the forest and turning the leaves red and gold with the colours of autumn. But the bear's spirit is not gone forever. The elder smiles and explains that by winter's arrival, the bear's spirit has risen back into the sky, and the eternal chase begins anew when spring comes again. Hearing this, the children look up at the night sky with wonder. In the patterns of stars, they now see the grand chase their elder has described. The night feels alive with the footsteps of hunters and the heartbeat of the great bear, all suspended above them in the stars. Around that crackling fire, the children gaze upward, seeing the bear and hunters in the stars, and understanding why the leaves change colour each fall. This sky story not only entertains them, but also connects the rhythms of the heavens to the rhythms of their lives on earth. In that moment, the night doesn't feel empty or unknown. It feels intimate and meaningful. Even the rustle of autumn leaves around them seems tied to the tale. The children snuggle closer, warmed by the flames and the knowledge that they are part of the great cosmic drama playing out above. Far to the north, another culture also found a great hunt in the stars. On a polar night long ago, a Sami storyteller might gesture toward the sparkling northern sky and describe a colossal moose outlined in the stars. Inside a snug tent of reindeer hide, children would listen wide-eyed as the fire cast shadows on the walls. Outside, beyond the tent flap, the Arctic winter wind howls over the snow. Gentle ribbons of green aurora light shimmer and dance on the horizon, adding to the magic of the night sky. But above, through a smoke hole, the elders point out the vast shape of the moose stretching across the sky. The crown of the moose's antlers, they say, glints in the W-shaped stars of Cassiopeia. Its broad back and shoulders spread across Perseus and Auriga. And always, on its trail, come the hunters. Fafnir, the great hunter, marked by the bright star Arcturus, forever drawing his bow, and behind him the three brothers on skis, outlined by the three stars of Orion's belt. The children can almost picture the giant animal fleeing, and the hunters gliding silently in pursuit across the dome of night. In that frozen landscape, the tale of the hunt makes the long darkness alive with excitement and mystery. In the Sami legend, night after night, the moose gallops across the sky, and the hunters trail tirelessly behind. The Sami say this chase will go on forever. Each evening the great moose appears in the east and runs toward the west, always managing to escape at the last moment, just as dawn breaks. And that is a good thing. They warn that the lead hunter must be careful with his aim, for directly above lies Boahji Nasti, the North Star, holding up the firmament. The North Star may appear small, but it is like a cosmic nail pinning the dome of heaven in place. If ever an arrow struck it, the heavens could collapse and fall. Thankfully, the moose always slips away, and the sky remains safely overhead, preserving the order of the world. This Sami tale, with its eternal pursuit and its built-in caution, is another echo of that great hunt motif. Different in detail, but wonderfully similar in spirit. Even the classical civilizations saw a hunter among the stars. In the mild winters of ancient Greece, people looked up at the night sky and told of Orion, the great hunter, outlined by a bright belt of 3 stars. They envisioned him as a giant figure striding across the heavens, his shoulder marked by a ruddy star and his foot by a blue-white star. By his side ran his loyal hunting dogs, represented by the stars of Canis Major and Canis Minor, with Sirius, the brightest of all stars, shining as the lead hound. In Greek myths, Orion roams the sky forever, pursuing all manner of wild beasts. Some say he chases the 7 sisters of the Pleiades star cluster, who flee his advances and were placed among the stars to escape him. Others recount that Orion met his fate from the sting of a giant scorpion, immortalized opposite him as the constellation Scorpius. To this day, when Scorpius rises in the summer sky, Orion flees below the horizon, as if the hunter is still running from the scorpion's deadly pursuit. Even in the sophisticated star lore of ancient Greece, we find the same theme of an eternal chase written in the constellations. Across the world, under all these different night skies, the pattern is striking. Humans separated by oceans and centuries imagined a similar celestial chase. This great hunt in the stars could well be one of humanity's oldest stories. In fact, some researchers suggest it dates back over 15,000 years, perhaps told by early peoples as they travelled and spread to new lands. It may have been born in the glow of Ice Age campfires, carried in memory as wanderers followed the herds and watched the stars, told and retold until it circled the globe. And through it, we see the night sky becoming a grand mirror of human experience. Even our age-old thrill of the hunt was written among the stars. Even the Greeks, for all their distinct myths, looked at those same 7 stars and saw a great bear, Ursa Major, circling the North Pole, echoing the theme in their own way. Why is the image of a hunt so enduring across the world's star lore? Perhaps because for early peoples, the hunt was a fundamental drama of life, a source of sustenance, danger, and reward. Night after night, as they watched predators stalk prey on the earth, they projected that familiar dance into the sky. The great bear, or moose in the stars, could symbolize the abundance they sought, and the tireless hunters mirrored their own determination. By weaving their everyday struggles into the cosmos, these communities gave cosmic significance to human challenges. The turning of the seasons, marked by the rising and setting of these constellation figures, reinforced lessons. There is a time to pursue, and a time when the chase must end. Around the fire, such stories not only entertained, but taught the young about bravery, caution, and respect for the balance of nature. The cosmic hunt, then, was more than a story. It was a reflection of life's cycle, painted in the stars for all to remember. Yet as much as the darkness above inspired tales of adventure and pursuit, it also spoke to our deepest hopes and fears. The sky became a canvas for questions about life and death. For as long as people have gazed upward, they have wondered if their spirits might one day take flight among those lights. For many, the night sky was a place of destiny and reunion, a guide for the soul itself. So now we turn from the cosmic hunt to a different kind of journey written in the stars, the path that souls travel beyond this life. Look up on a clear, moonless night, far from any human lights, and you'll see a faint, silvery band stretching across the sky. This misty river of light is the Milky Way, the dense glow of countless distant stars woven together. In truly dark skies, it can be so vivid that it looks like wisps of cloud or a trail of spilled milk across the heavens, which is how it got its name. To our ancestors, this shimmering band was more than a beautiful backdrop for the constellations. Many cultures believed it was a road, a celestial pathway that souls walk on their journey from this world to the next. In the quiet darkness, that arch of light became a bridge between life and the afterlife, a comforting sign that our spirits might have somewhere to go and guides to lead the way. Picture a community centuries ago, gathered on the night after a beloved elder's passing. A small fire burns low at the center of the camp, and the people sit in its glow with heavy hearts. The mourners step outside under the velvet sky to pay their respects. Above them, the Milky Way glistens, a broad, gentle band of light that they know as the Spirit Road. They speak in hushed voices, sending prayers upward to guide the departed soul. In their minds, they can almost see the spirit of their loved one stepping onto that celestial road, ascending among the stars. The grieving family finds comfort in this vision. As the pale light arches overhead, it is as if a path has been laid out for the soul's journey. Their ancestor is not lost in darkness, but moving along that familiar, illuminated trail in the sky, heading toward a distant, welcoming homeland among the stars. The night that had felt lonely with loss now feels a little less cold, knowing that a guide shines above for the one they love. This vision of the Milky Way as a highway for souls is astonishingly widespread. The ancient Romans also imagined the Milky Way as a gleaming road of spirits en route to the afterlife. In parts of West Africa, some say it is the campfires of departed souls, or the very footprints of the gods, strewn across the night to light the way. Looking up at that misty band, people everywhere sense that it must lead somewhere, perhaps to the realm of the ancestors. Many Native American nations shared this belief too. The Cree, for example, named the Milky Way the Path of Souls, and taught that when someone dies, their spirit travels westward across the earth and eventually up onto that starry road in the sky. Along the way, a soul might need to leap over a dark gap or face a test at the edge of the sky, but if successful, it would follow the Milky Way onward to a final resting place among the stars. On certain winter nights, when the Milky Ways split, the great rift of darkness was visible. Elders would say that was the place where souls had to be brave and make their leap to continue the journey. Far to the south, the Maya in Central America looked at that same glowing band and called it the White Road, seeing in it a route to the underworld of Xibalba, or a bridge that souls could cross between realms. Even in ancient Egypt, we find the idea of a heavenly road. Pharaohs were entombed with texts describing how to ascend to the sky and join the imperishable stars. To them, the Milky Way might be a celestial reflection of the Nile, a waterway through the heavens that the departed could sail upon. Across cultures and continents, the message was similar. Death was not an end, but a journey, and the great ribbon of the Milky Way was the guide that would carry us safely onward to the next world. In the still hours of the night, such stories transformed the sky into a source of comfort. The Milky Way's soft glow turned the uncertainty of death into a journey illuminated by hope. To those who believed, no soul was ever truly lost in the dark. Instead, every loved one who passed became a traveler up above, following that shining trail to a new world. And for those left behind on Earth, the knowledge that a brilliant guideway stretched overhead was a gentle reassurance. Just as the stars had watched over them in life, so too would they guide their spirits onward in death. Under that starry arch, people felt that no one truly travelled alone. It is touching how the idea of a starry road for souls appears in so many traditions. Faced with the mystery of death, different peoples independently found comfort in the same vision, a bridge of light leading onward. By imagining a path in the sky, they gave structure to the unknown. Death became not an abrupt extinguishing, but a voyage, one that could be anticipated, prepared for, and ultimately embraced without fear. It reassured the living to think that their departed were not lost in chaos, but guided gently by starlight to a welcoming realm. Many communities would hold rituals to help the soul on its way, offering food, prayers, or songs to accompany the journey. And when they looked up at the Milky Way on a clear night, they felt a closeness to those who had gone before. That milky arch was like a promise written across the sky, that life's story continued beyond the horizon of mortality. In sharing this belief across continents, humanity found a universal source of solace in the stars. Stars did not only guide the dead, they guided the living as well. Since the dawn of seafaring, people have navigated by the heavens. On open plains, in trackless deserts, and especially on the ocean, the sky became a trusted map and compass combined. Perhaps the most extraordinary example comes from the vast Pacific Ocean, where Polynesian voyagers set sail in voyaging canoes to cross enormous distances of open sea. Centuries ago, long before modern compasses or charts, these explorers managed to find tiny specks of land scattered over thousands of miles. How did they find their way across the endless blue? Their secret was the stars above, which they knew intimately and used as faithful guides on their epic journeys. With this knowledge, Polynesians became some of the greatest navigators the world has ever known. Now imagine the middle of the Pacific Ocean centuries ago. A double-hulled canoe rises and falls gently on midnight swells. All around is perfect darkness. The horizon is barely a whisper. The ocean is vast and empty to the eyes. But overhead the sky is ablaze with stars like diamonds on black velvet. A navigator stands at the stern, knees braced, eyes tracing patterns in the night. Around him, a few fellow voyagers lie asleep, confident in his guidance. There is no land in sight, no map to consult, no compass, only the heavens to steer by. He feels the warm, salt-tinged tropical breeze and listens to the rhythmic hush of waves against the hull. Above, familiar stars wheel slowly from east to west. Each one is an old friend, carrying a piece of home and a promise of a destination. Now and then, a flash of blue-green radiance appears where a wave breaks. The sea itself is coming alive with its own kind of starlight, as tiny bioluminescent plankton spark in the canoe's wake. The whole world around him seems filled with lights, above and below. The sea surface gently glitters with the reflection of the sky, uniting the heavens and the ocean in one vast, twinkling panorama. The navigator's knowledge is profound and quietly miraculous. He knows exactly where each star will rise and set on the horizon. Before departure, he chose a star that would lead the way. Now, he keeps the canoe pointed toward that star as it hovers over the dark water. As the hours pass, and that guiding star climbs higher in the sky, he must select a new target, another star emerging from the ocean ahead to take its place. With practiced ease, he shifts his gaze to a second star that rises in the same bearing, ensuring the canoe stays on course. Through the night, he will do this again and again, switching from star to star, each one appearing at just the right spot to continue the journey. It is like stepping stones of light across the sky. A star rises directly in line with the canoe's path. He follows it until it moves, and another star replaces it, always moving toward the intended island. In this way, the navigator uses the stars as a celestial compass, steering by their steady positions. Sometimes, to keep the course and pass the long night, the navigator softly hums a sacred chant under his breath. It is the song of the stars that his own teacher taught him. In its verses, the names of guiding stars are recited in the exact order they rise and set along the horizon. As he murmurs this ancient melody, each star appears in turn right where the words predict, like musical notes played by the sky itself. This quiet song keeps the navigator focused and connected to the wisdom of all the seafarers who came before him, back through time, who used the same song to cross the same seas. This skill did not come easily. It was the result of a lifetime of observation and teaching passed down through generations. As a young apprentice, our navigator learned to identify hundreds of stars and remember their seasonal movements. Elder navigators taught him using songs and stories, a living star map committed to memory. On shore, they would draw patterns in the sand or point to the sky at twilight, naming each star and the direction it would guide them. Night after night, year after year, he practiced until the sky became as familiar as a well-trodden path. He learned how in the northern hemisphere, certain stars like Polaris mark the north, while near the equator he could use the stars of Orion or the Southern Cross to find his bearings. He learned that in Hawaii, the star called Hokulea Arcturus shines directly overhead, a celestial signpost of the islands, and that other stars, when they rose or set at the horizon, pointed the way to distant archipelagos. Such knowledge was revered. The navigators were esteemed as keepers of sacred directions, bridging earth and sky. With this star lore in hand, Polynesian navigators achieved feats that today might seem almost unbelievable. They sailed out of sight of any land and successfully found new islands scattered across the Pacific. Guided only by starlight and the clues of nature, they settled far-flung archipelagos, from Hawaii in the North Pacific to Aotearoa, New Zealand, in the south, and Rapa Nui, Easter Island, at the far eastern edge of Polynesia. Each voyage, sometimes covering thousands of miles of open ocean, was like finding a needle in a cosmic haystack. It was a testament to human skill, memory, and the faithful guidance of the stars that such journeys succeeded again and again. Out on those dark waters, the line between knowledge and reverence blurred. The stars were tools, yes, but also trusted friends and guardians. A navigator might whisper a thank you to the rising sun as dawn broke, grateful for another successful night's guidance across the empty sea. In Polynesian traditions, the cosmos was alive with meaning. The ocean, the sky, and the people were all connected by these shared patterns of light. As the sky brightened at daybreak and the constellations faded, the navigator would finally close his eyes, trusting the sun by day as he had trusted the stars by night. The achievements of these voyagers stand as living proof of how profoundly our ancestors understood the night sky, and how far that understanding could take them across the world. While the stars led seafarers to distant shores, those who remained on land also found guidance and stories in the heavens. In the southern hemisphere, beneath the distinctive slant of the Southern Cross constellation, a new kind of star pattern emerges. It isn't formed by connecting bright stars into shapes, but rather by looking at the darkness itself. Here, among the glow of the Milky Way, indigenous Australians saw the silhouette of a great emu stretched out in the night. The emu in the sky, as they call it, is a constellation drawn in shadow, an immense dark bird watching over the Australian landscape from above. To spot the emu in the sky, one must attune to the darkness between the stars. First find the Southern Cross, a compact kite-shaped constellation low in the southern sky. Just next to it, you'll notice a coal-black patch where the Milky Way's glow is obscured. That is the emu's head. From there, a chain of dark blotches winds its way along the Milky Way, forming a long neck, a bulky body, and legs. Once you see the outline, it's unmistakable. A great emu stretching across the heavens, not drawn by starlight, but by star shadows. It's a breathtaking sight, a reminder that sometimes what's not visible can be as meaningful as what is. Aboriginal peoples across Australia have different stories about how that emu got up into the sky. In one widespread tale, the emu was a giant bird roaming the earth during the Dreamtime, the creation era when ancestral spirits formed the world. A blind man lived with his wife, and each day he sent her to gather emu eggs for food. One day, she followed the tracks of an enormous emu and found its nest full of huge eggs. When she tried to take them, the giant emu attacked and tragically killed her. The blind man, worried when his wife did not return, miraculously gained his sight, some say by tasting magical berries, and set out to find her. Discovering what happened, he pursued the great bird for days. Finally, he slew the emu with his spear. As the bird's spirit rose from its body, the hunter declared that such a powerful creature should never plague the earth again. Instead, it would live forever in the sky. He banished the emu's spirit to the heavens, where it became the dark shape along the Milky Way. And so, the great emu was fixed among the stars, to remind people of that tale and its lessons. Aboriginal Australia is rich with such stories, and different communities tell variations of the emu legend. In another tale, two brothers went out hunting that cosmic emu. After a long chase, they found the giant bird. One brother, frightened by the emu's imposing size, scrambled up a tree to hide, while the other bravely confronted and speared the creature. The victorious brother called out, trying to coax the terrified one down from the tree, but he refused to descend. Frustrated, the hunter transformed his fearful brother into a possum and left him clinging to a tree branch. To this day, some say that possum can be seen in the sky too. A tiny shape perched just above the emu, forever safe on his cosmic tree limb, while the great emu stretches below. This celestial emu was not just a story told for amusement. It was woven into the fabric of daily life and survival. The appearance of the emu in the sky at different times of year signaled changes on the land. On certain evenings, the emu's body stretches low across the horizon, as if running. This told Aboriginal Australians that the emus on Earth were laying their eggs. It was time to venture out and gather those nourishing eggs for sustenance. Later in the year, when the emu rises higher and stands upright in the sky at dusk, it meant the egg-laying season had passed. Now the grown emus themselves could be hunted. In this way, the sky became a seasonal calendar and guide, indicating when to find food and when to refrain, ensuring the emu population was respected and sustained year after year. Beyond practicality, the emu in the sky carries profound cultural meaning. Emus hold a sacred place in many Aboriginal traditions, often seen as creator spirits or caretakers of the land. To see their form in the heavens affirmed a deep connection between the people, the earth, and the cosmos. It was understood that what happened in the sky reflected what happened on the ground. Some communities even marked this connection in their sacred sites. At certain locations, rock engravings of an emu on Earth align with the emu constellation in the sky on specific nights, uniting heaven and earth in a single image. Imagine standing at such a site, the outline of an emu carved in stone at your feet, and directly above, the majestic dark emu shimmering in the Milky Way. In that moment, you would feel the unity of the universe, the sky and land mirroring each other, everything connected. The emu in the sky reminds us that human eyes have always sought patterns and meaning above. With great ingenuity, ancient Australians turned the dark spaces into a cosmic story that guided and inspired them. Their night sky was as alive with knowledge as any, full of characters, morals, and markers of time. What the emu in the sky teaches us is that there is more than one way to read the night. Western astronomy focused on the stars themselves, drawing lines between points of light to create familiar shapes. But Indigenous Australians looked at the spaces in between and found meaningful patterns hiding in plain sight. It is a beautiful reminder that knowledge and imagination can illuminate even darkness. By seeing the shadow constellations, they proved that the night sky isn't just about stars, but also about the vast darkness that frames them. In that darkness, they discovered wisdom: when to hunt, when to harvest, when to tell certain stories. The emu was not only a celestial calendar, but a spiritual presence. It connected the earthly emu, a creature central to their creation stories and survival, with the cosmos above, reinforcing the idea that sky and land mirror one another. Such a perspective fosters profound respect. If the heavens themselves contain the image of an emu, then surely the emus on Earth must be treated with reverence. The dark, embracing astronomy of Aboriginal peoples reveals how attuned they were to the nuances of nature's clues. In a modern world so filled with artificial light that we often lose sight of the Milky Way, their legacy gently invites us to step away from the glare, to look up on a moonless night, and to let our eyes adjust to see those subtle, sacred shapes that our ancestors saw. In doing so, we not only honour their memory, but also enrich our own connection with the sky. And as we step back and consider all these tales, the cosmic hunts, the spirit paths, the guiding stars, and the emu in the sky, we see a beautiful tapestry, of human imagination. Separated by vast distances and different cultures, our ancestors all shared the same impulse to find meaning in the night. They found in the stars not only practical guides and calendars, but also living stories and comforts. Our tour of these starlit tales may end here, but their echoes continue every time night falls and the stars emerge overhead. Whenever we tilt our heads back to gaze at the glittering sky, we are joining an ancient tradition. We remember that under this very same sky, countless others before us have loved, wondered, and told stories. In the hush of a starry night, if you listen closely, you might almost hear them. The whispers of those ancestors, carried in the starlight, telling us that we are never alone in the dark.